Chapter 18. Li Hongming quickly learned of Jingwan's identity from his subordinates. He was slightly disappointed that she wasn't from the main branch, but from the second branch. However, she was the only grandchild left by Madame Luo aside from the fourth branch of the Luo family. It could be seen that she was deeply doted on by Madame Luo. Even if the value of the marriage wasn't that great, there might be other uses for her in the future. Luo Peishan was currently sitting in the position of Minister of Rights. He wasn't very useful, but he knew that Luo Peishan was quite capable. He just lacked some luck, otherwise he would have been sitting in the position of Minister of War. The Minister of Appointments was old and had been plagued with illness for the past year. From time to time, he would ask for leave. It was very likely that he would retire after this examination. The brothers were all fighting openly and covertly to push their own people up. However, he didn't have a suitable candidate right now. He was also considering pushing those neutral people up and putting his label on them. In his heart, he screened the people with the ability one by one and found that Luo Peishan was really a good candidate. After pushing him up, he would marry a girl from the Luo family as a secondary consort. Basically, he would firmly tie Luo Peishan to his side. Thinking of this, Li Hongming's mood became even better. It wasn't that he didn't consider that the other brothers might make the same choice, but he was confident that no one else would have the right to interfere if he made a move. There was no morning court today, but the things that needed to be done still had to be done. Li Hongming first went to the Yamen of the Ministry of Revenue to finish the things at hand. Because he was a prince, a Qinhuang, he only had a nominal position in the Ministry of Revenue. There weren't many things that he needed to personally handle. What he really needed to do was to know the situation in the Ministry of Revenue in detail. After all, even with his noble status, there were some things that he couldn't come into contact with. This required him to slowly gather people, slowly understand the situation, and slowly infiltrate. After dealing with the Ministry of Revenue, Li Hongming entered the palace and went directly to see Noble Consort Su. In Noble Consort Su's place, Li Hongming was rarely relaxed. After sitting down, he seemed a bit lazy. Although he didn't have Li Hongyuan's peerlessly good looks, he was still tall and handsome. Even if he was wearing casual clothes, he didn't lack the bearing of a prince. It could be said that he had the bearing of a dragon, a phoenix, and an imposing appearance. Meng Yuan-er's temper has been so bad recently, and it has lasted for so long. Who provoked him? Imperial concubine Su, who was dressed in formal attire, sat high up in the main hall of the Jade Essence Palace. Her eyes were slightly lowered, restraining the unique charm formed by the upturned corners of her eyes. She carelessly fiddled with her long, carefully manicured nails. Her nails were not painted with nail polish, but a natural pink color. She was already over 40 years old, but there were not many traces of age on her body, especially her hands, which were slender and beautiful, with plump and round fingertips. Who knows? He was dissatisfied that Imperial concubine Su had asked about the person he hated the moment she opened her mouth, so he couldn't help but be a little perfunctory and indifferent. Imperial consort Su glanced at her son. Your imperial father doesn't allow him to enter the palace, and imperial mother can't see him. As his elder brother, you naturally have to care for your younger brother. Go and see him after you leave the palace. He is. His lazy posture was tinged with a bit of hostility, and he couldn't help but raise his voice. Meng, Imperial concubine Su calmly interrupted him. Her usually gentle gaze now contained a trace of sharpness. Li Hongming met her gaze, and the momentum on his body disappeared. He unnaturally turned his head away. He didn't want to admit that he respected and feared this woman who gave birth to him, raised him, and spoiled him. He didn't want to admit that there was still fear in his heart at this time. Ming, I have always treated you and Yuana equally. You can't take it for granted that I should treat you better just because he didn't crawl out of my womb. He has been raised by my side since he was little. In my opinion, he is the same as you. You are already married, with a wife and a daughter. Why are you still jealous like a little girl? Imperial concubine Su gently smiled. Go and see him after you leave the palace, understand? Li Hongming stared at imperial concubine Su for a moment, and then put away all his emotions. Like a modest gentleman, he answered with a perfect and warm smile. Yes. The mother and son happily talked about other things, mixed with light laughter from time to time. The atmosphere was very good. The palace servants next to them all sighed with emotion that imperial concubine Su was indeed a gentle and good mother. Even if she secretly fought with the empress and the other concubines, it couldn't erase the fact that she was the best mother in the harem. Thinking about the bad-tempered, ruthless, and willful Prince Jean, who sometimes even dared to talk back to His Majesty, he was the most obedient in front of imperial concubine Su. In the afternoon, ask Lady Lu to bring my 2 granddaughters into the palace. The Lady Lu mentioned by imperial concubine Su was Prince Rui's legal wife. Li Hongming nodded. Okay, how is Lady Qian? Imperial concubine Su asked faintly. Li Hongming glanced at imperial concubine Su, who was casually drinking tea, and slightly lowered his eyes. She's fine. His Wang Fei was virtuous and kind. She provided Lady Lu with good food and drinks, and there were 2 female medical attendants by her side at all times. Every 3 days, an imperial physician would come to the Fu to take her pulse. There was no trouble at all, so it was hard for her not to be well. No matter how ironic he felt in his heart, he didn't show it. If I give birth to a boy, is Lady Lu going to raise him herself, or ask for Lady Qian to be concubine? Lady Qian was only a concubine, so she naturally didn't have the qualifications to raise an imperial grandson. Both. Imperial concubine Su looked at her son with slight surprise. If Lady Qian became a concubine, then the harem of Lord Rui's mansion would be lively in the future. You can decide for yourselves. Okay, I won't keep you any longer. Leave the palace early. Aken will take his leave. Li Hongming stepped out of the gate of the Jade Essence Palace and slowly exhaled. This place made him relax, but also made him feel depressed. He relaxed because he didn't have to hide his various schemes, and the source of his depression was self-evident. Even if all his good mood was gone, Li Hongming was still the polite and cultured Li Hongming. But when he thought of meeting that bastard, his heart felt suffocated. He couldn't afford to offend that devil incarnate. Okay? Perhaps to disperse the depression in his heart, or perhaps to see that bastard as late as possible, Li Hongming deliberately slowed down his steps, which made him look more graceful and noble. He didn't know how many palace maids blushed. They weren't originally on the same path, but they all turned a corner and had a chance encounter in front of him. Greetings to Prince Rui. Li Hongming didn't know how many times he said, "You're excused." Every time he said it, his heart became more irritable. He wished he could drag all these people out and beat them to death. Unfortunately, he wasn't Li Hongyuan. The people he had always disdained made him envious at this time. If he was unhappy, he would kick them. Not only would he not receive any punishment, but a group of people would coax him as if he was their ancestor, only asking him to calm down. That kind of satisfaction, he, Li Hongming, could probably only occasionally enjoy it in private. If it happened too many times, he was afraid it would spread to Fu Wang's ears and ruin his image. He couldn't help but quicken his steps. Even if that bastard made his liver hurt, he was still Fu Wang's son. It was better than being sulked here by these servants. Li Hongming arrived at Jin Wangfu. Because he was unhappy, after confirming that Li Hongyuan was in the Fu, he directly barged in without waiting for a report. The Fu's guards naturally didn't dare to stop him. However, none of the servants in Jin Wangfu didn't have eyes. Before Li Hongming even entered the door, someone had already reported to Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan was in the pavilion in the back garden, leaning on the couch and drinking wine. Around him, the music of bamboo and wind instruments lingered. Hundreds of flowers bloomed and dancers danced in chanting. It was a scene of drunken stupor. It would be a lie if Li Hongming said he wasn't jealous. However, his Fu didn't even have an opera troupe, let alone these multi-talented and beautiful concubines. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it. In the end, it was still a matter of appearance. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652892. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 19. Li Hongyuan shook the wine jug in his hand. It was empty, so he casually tossed it to the side. Only then did Li Hongyuan notice that there were already 5 or 6 empty wine jugs on the ground. Smelling the fragrance in the air, the 100-year-old top-grade 100 flowers, wine was just for him to drink like water. His heart was once again unbalanced. Who among his brothers was as extravagant as him? If others dared to do this, they would have been scolded by Imperial Father. Only this bastard. Imperial Father had used all kinds of punishment methods, but he still refused to change. Imperial Father had long given up on him. If there were too many impeachment memorials from a court, Emperor Lu would wildly scold them. Did they have nothing better to do? Instead of doing their own things, they only knew how to stare at his son all day long. He was the dignified ruler of the world, but he couldn't control his son. It was very tiring. This group of blind people even deliberately sprinkled salt on his wound. Everyone knew that the emperor didn't like Prince Jean on the surface, but for some reason, he favored him in his heart. Otherwise, with Li Hongyuan's detestable character, he would have been ganged up on and killed long ago. However, the more he lived, the more unfettered he became. Those who opposed him didn't have a good ending. Fine, if they saw him in the future, they would take a detour. Because of his mother, he was treated quite well in front of this person. Many of his brothers had been beaten up by him, and the princesses and princesses of the imperial family had also been angered to tears by him in various ways. Thinking of this, his heart was a lot more balanced. Li Hongming repeatedly reminded himself that there were gains and losses. Then he calmly asked, "What's wrong recently? Why are you so angry? Who provoked you?" He acted like a good brother. Li Hongyuan finally gave him a charitable look. "Do I need a reason to be in a bad mood?" The corner of Li Hongming's mouth twitched. Who the hell would be in a bad mood for no reason? Even if he was temperamental, after such a long time, he should have calmed down. Imperial Mother is very worried about you. Li Hongyuan's hand that was holding the wine cup paused. The drunkenness in his eyes seemed to dissipate a little. Tomorrow, this prince will go to the palace to see her. Li Hongming laughed sarcastically in his heart. Sometimes he would think, between him and his 6th brother, who was more pitiful. But Imperial Father still hasn't removed the ban on you. Li Hongyuan curled his lips in disdain. Do you think those gatekeepers of the palace can stop this prince? How many people would do anything to become a guard of the imperial palace? Were they just gatekeepers in this person's eyes? A bunch of dogs? Li Hongming thought that he had the gift of the gab. No matter what the topic was, he would be able to answer it. However, he was repeatedly thwarted by Li Hongyuan. When this devil incarnate spoke, he would either leave you speechless or choke you until your liver hurt. All right, do as you see fit. After that, Li Hongming shifted his gaze to the group of dancers. Li Hongming was not particularly fond of beauties, but at this time, he was deeply attracted to the leading dancer. Her face was covered with a light veil, and her flexible waist was faintly discernible. The gauze skirt below was fluttering, and her eyes were like rippling waves. That gaze of hers was as if she saw you as the love of her heart, but also as if there was nothing in the world that could enter her eyes. She was seductive and unapproachable, which made people want to conquer her. To put it more bluntly, she was a natural stunner. Li Hongyuan's throat moved. Perhaps it was because he had drunk the aged wine, but his whole body was a little hot. Li Hongming had always been a self-disciplined person, so naturally, he would not lose his composure because of this scene. He looked at Li Hongyuan. Such a beauty. Where did you get her? Li Hongyuan might be really drunk, so he did not pay attention to him at all. So Eunuch Mu did his duty and answered for his master. Your Highness, she was sent by the dance studio. The dance studio was a private dance studio in the capital. It was rumored that the boss behind it was the #1 dancer from more than 20 years ago. She specialized in training dancers, either by training the people she bought and selling them, or by helping people train them. Although the former were not all beautiful, their figures were absolutely top-notch. Not only high officials and nobles liked them, but also brothels liked them. As for the latter, as long as you were willing to spend money, you could send any man or woman. That's right, both men and women could be sent there, according to the requirements of each customer. The difficulty of training was different, and the price was not the same. But the lowest price was thousands of taels of silver, and it was said that no customer was dissatisfied with the result of training. Li Hongyuan was a regular customer of the dance studio. Of course, he only bought ready-made ones, and the one in front of him was sent by the dance studio. It was reasonable. How could a woman's dance studio have a foothold in the capital without a backer? Not to mention other things, those tigresses of high officials and nobles could crush the dance studio to ashes. Sixth brother, you have good luck with women, Li Hongming said in a slightly hoarse voice. Li Hongyuan had already closed his eyes slightly and restrained his usual violent aura. His whole person looked infinitely magnificent. Li Hongming secretly clicked his tongue. If he met someone who liked Nanfeng, he was afraid that he would be completely unable to control himself and directly throw himself at him. Even if he knew that the consequences would be very miserable, he would still do it without hesitation. It was no wonder that outsiders would say that Li Hongyuan, Prince Jin, was useless except for his face. However, there were still many women who wanted to throw themselves into his arms like moths to a flame. They wanted his pity, they wanted to occupy the most important position in his heart, and they also wanted to know what he would look like if he really fell in love with someone. Li Hongyuan was a good beauty. If he didn't have a good appearance, don't even think about letting him take a second look at you. However, there was also a saying of 7 days of favor. Those who caught his eye would receive 100% of his favor. A woman who was doted on by him could simply become the happiest woman in the world. Unfortunately, it would never exceed 7 days, because the feeling of being doted on by him was too wonderful. Many women wanted to break this curse like 7 days by luck, but none of them had a good ending. As a result, after so many years, a path of withered bones and beauties was paved under his feet. When the dancer finished her song, the surroundings also became quiet. The dancer took graceful steps and slowly approached Li Hongyuan. Her appearance was truly one of deep love, and her eyes were filled with admiration. The woman that Li Hongming wanted to conquer just a moment ago was now completely submissive to another man. He unconsciously tightened his grip on the cup. Prince. The dancer gently leaned against the edge of the couch. Looking at Li Hongyuan's face, she became more and more infatuated. She leaned over and reached out her hand. Suddenly, an unforeseen event occurred. The dancer was kicked off the couch by Li Hongyuan. That strength was so fierce that Li Hongming seemed to hear the sound of bones breaking. The dancer screamed. Her face instantly turned pale, and she fell to the ground. For a while, she didn't dare to move. Li Hongyuan sat up and unhurriedly straightened his clothes. It's taken care of. He got up and walked away with slightly drunk steps. Sixth brother, since this dancer made you unhappy, why don't you give her to third brother? Li Hongming looked at the woman and unexpectedly opened his mouth. Unfortunately, Li Hongyuan still didn't give him face and ignored him. Li Hongming clenched his fists. Your Highness, you just need to take them back, Eunuch Mu said respectfully. Oh, you can make the decision on this matter? Sixth brother won't be angry? Li Hongming loosened his hand and said with a smile. Eunuch Mu smiled awkwardly at Li Hongming. Prince, you know what kind of temper our master has. If he is tired of her, he can do whatever he wants with her. So, 7 days have passed? Li Hongming's expression was a little bad. No, this dancer was just sent here yesterday. It's just that master's temper has been bad recently, so he doesn't have the mood. I see. No wonder he doesn't have tender feelings for the fairer sex. Li Hongming got up and walked to the dancer. He squatted down, raised her chin, and took off the veil. She was worthy of being kept by his good brother, who had seen countless beauties. Even if she hadn't won his favor, she was absolutely stunning. A beauty is a beauty. It's just that your luck is a little bad, so you don't have the chance to enjoy the 7 days of favor. Go back with me. Although I can't be as popular as sixth brother, I won't be tired of it after 7 days. She was just a dancer, so she naturally had no right to refuse. Li Hongming got the beauty, so he didn't bother to ask why Li Hongyuan was in a bad mood. Anyway, he just went through the motions at the beginning to explain to his mother. After eunuch Mu sent Li Hongming away, he went to the study. Master, Lord Rui took her away. At this time, Li Hongyuan was not drunk at all. His face was expressionless, but the hostility in his eyes was frightening. Li Hongming has guts. He dares to have ideas about Wanwan. Tell that person to pass on the message that if she doesn't serve this prince's good third brother well, she will suffer a fate worse than death. Yes. Eunuch Mu said in his heart, Master, it hasn't reached that point. Lord Rui just lacks Miss Luo's identity. As for the dancer, she doesn't even know who her real target is. Her value is just SOSO. He wants to have Luo Peishan in his hand. You must let the others know. This time, if I don't cut off one of his arms, I'll wash your necks clean. In his previous life, Li Hongyuan didn't want the throne. At this time, he was helping Li Hongming. But obviously, Li Hongyuan was very wary of him. He didn't know what Li Hongming was doing. Sure enough, he was fully prepared. Nothing could escape from his hands. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652893. HTML. Click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 20. Before lunch, Madame Luo called Chen Zhengmin over. Since she was already tempted, she might as well be decisive. She calmly inquired about her third brother's situation and Chen Jingmin's background. Therefore, even Jingwan, who was sitting quietly next to her, did not notice anything amiss. As for the person being inquired about, he was not aware of it at all. Because he had heard his grandmother mention this grand-aunt more than once, he knew that they had a good relationship. However, after his grand-aunt got married, they rarely met, especially in the following 10 years. Therefore, he respectfully and politely answered all of Madame Luo's questions. It could be said that he did not hide anything and was very detailed. Madame Luo was a little sad. I don't know if we will have a chance to meet again in this lifetime. Grandfather said that he may return to the capital again. Grandaunt, you will definitely have a chance to meet grandfather again. Please take care of yourself. That's good. Madame Luo told him a few more things, such as not to study too hard, to rest early, especially at night, and not to be cooped up at home all the time. He could also take some time to go out and walk around. If he encountered any problems, he could go directly to Luo Shangshu. If he was not there, he could also go to her. She would leave the questions for the evening and have someone send them back to Chen Zhengmin the next day. Chen Zhengmin was naturally very excited. His grandaunt was the third-place winner and had accumulated experience over the past few decades. Last time, he only gave him a little advice, and he benefited a lot. However, will it be too much trouble for grandaunt? His face was slightly red. Was he embarrassed? Jingwan thought of herself as a thick-skinned person. It was rare to see a man blushing, and it was only because he might be troubling others. In her opinion, it was quite rare, and she could not help but look at him a little more. However, knowing that he was troubling others, he was still honest about his desire. This kind of person was not bad. Madame Luo glanced at Jingwan secretly and smiled. It's not troublesome. It's just a small matter. Your grandaunt will also check on your fourth uncle and your cousins every day. Luo Peishan was willing to help talented juniors, not to mention the eldest grandson of his own brother. If Wan Wan could be engaged to him, his master would definitely do his best. Because it was just incidental, it made Chen Zhengmin feel less guilty. There were other people around, so Madame Luo couldn't ask for Jingwan's opinion. So she didn't mention it for the time being. The trip to the Chen clan could be said to be a joyous one. As for the displeasure in the hearts of those few people who would care about it, when they left the Chen family, Jingwan was still kept by Madame Luo's side, and no one was left to serve them in the carriage. Wan Wan, how are you getting along with the Chen sisters? They are all very easy to get along with. The first branch of the Chen family did not have as many people as the Luo family. Moreover, the first 3 cousins of the Chen family were already married, while the last 2 were still relatively young. Therefore, there were only 3 or 4 people who were close to the age of Jingwan, including the second branch of the Chen family. Moreover, their temperament was relatively good, except for a little cousin who always stared at her jewelry and said flattering words as if they were free. The only one who almost directly asked for it was a little annoying. Jingwan smiled and sent her away because she knew that once this kind of thing started, it might be out of control. She was not a child of wealth. It was just that the little girl would say that she was stingy behind her back. Jingwan was right. In fact, the little cousin was the daughter of Madame Yun, a woman who was unscrupulous and shameless. How well could she teach her daughter? While the little lass was complaining to her mother, the other girls were telling their respective grandmothers about the matter with ugly expressions on their faces. Thinking about that scene, they were so ashamed that they were unable to show their faces. Not only was Madame Chen furious, but even second Madame Chen was also very angry. Because she was dissatisfied with Madame Yun, she didn't care and let her do whatever she wanted. However, now she couldn't continue to indulge, otherwise, if she made the first branch unhappy, the entire second branch would be implicated. She called Madame Yun and her daughter over, scolded them, and grounded them for a month. It must be said that the little girl was also unruly in front of second Madame Chen. She shouted on the spot, and then second Madame Chen slapped her and threw her into the temple, where she was locked up for 3 days. Madame Yun was dissatisfied and angry. As a result, her daughter was locked up for 15 days. Only then did Madame Yun and her daughter know that they were afraid. Therefore, in this world, it was really easy for a mother-in-law to punish her daughter-in-law. She didn't even need to find a reason or an excuse. Madame Yun didn't cherish second Madame Chen's indifference before, so from today on, she was destined to be in deep trouble in the future. Madame Yun didn't dare to shout at second Madame Chen anymore, but in her heart, she deeply hated Jingwan. This was a new hatred that hadn't been settled yet. Jingwan also didn't know. If she knew, she would probably feel very wronged. This enemy really came a little inexplicable. Wan Wan, what do you think of your cousin Min? And Jingwan was a little confused and didn't react for a moment. Grandmother is saying to let your cousin Min be your husband. What do you think? Madame Luo was full of smiles as she teased. Jingwan was slightly startled. Her first reaction was that this was too fast. Before she came, they were still talking about her marriage. When she went back, they might have already decided on a fiancé for her. At first glance, it's not bad, but because it involves marriage, granddaughter feels that the first impression isn't that important. Jingwan said honestly. As for cousins, that was the norm in this world. Moreover, they weren't considered direct cousins. Their bloodline was diluted by the previous generation, so they were further apart. The possibility of hereditary diseases should also be reduced. And you're right, we're not in a hurry. In the future, grandmother will think of a way to let you two meet a few more times. Let your grandfather help you take a good look. If Wan Wan is satisfied, then we'll settle on him. If not, then we'll find someone else. However, we can't just focus on Min Gear alone. While grandmother is still able to walk, you should go to more banquets in the future. As for your grandaunt, I'll also ask her to help you find a suitable candidate. "Thank you, grandmother." Jingwan knew that in fact, her grandmother didn't like banquets that much. However, for her, she didn't hesitate to go to such lengths, even breaking traditional etiquette, to secretly help her cover up. How could she not be touched? Her eyes were slightly moist. Madame Luo patted her hand. Our Wan deserved the best. In her previous life, there was a period of time when Jingwan complained that the heavens were unfair. Why did they give her a happy family? But in the blink of an eye, it was shattered. That scumbag loved power so much, but why couldn't he just pretend and endure it for a lifetime? It was fine if he cheated, but for the sake of a fetus that they didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl, he actually harmed her mother. He used all his corruption and perverted the law to keep a mistress outside. Not only that, he was also involved with the underworld, gambling, and drugs. When the higher-ups started to investigate him, he suffered retribution and died a violent death. His originally wealthy family was completely shut down, and there was a pile of evidence. After his death, he was still able to perform meritorious deeds. The underworld leaders were in trouble. When they couldn't find their creditors, they went to them. Grandma had hurt her body to protect her, and for half a year, she had to suffer and despair. Those who had never experienced it would never understand how it felt. But later on, Jingwan felt that she was lucky. She had a grandmother who pulled her back from the edge of the abyss. After her grandmother passed away, she, who was muddle-headed, received spiritual comfort in a different world. What was even more fortunate was that she met another grandmother whose temperament and experience were completely different from her grandmother's, but who also did her best for her. The other relatives around her also treated her very well. If this wasn't considered lucky, then there weren't many lucky people in the world. When she returned to the Luo family, Madame Luo unexpectedly received an invitation from the Sun family's Duchess Ding. It turned out that the Sun Ijia's banquet tomorrow was only a part of the Sun family's banquet. After knowing that the wife of the Minister of Rights was coming to the capital, the Sun family sent another invitation. Before that, Jingwan's aunt, Madame Wang, had already received the invitation. As for the younger generation of Luo Jingying, they were completely unaware of this. They were all proud of receiving an invitation from Sun Ijia. The entire banquet invited almost all the noble madams and unmarried girls in the capital. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652895. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 21. No matter what the purpose of the Sun family was, Madame Luo was ready to go. It was not only because of Jingwan's matter. Among the noble ladies in the capital, her status was not low, but she had never appeared before. Now that she was going to the capital, she had to give a signal. The interaction between the ladies in the inner courtyard was also very important. Therefore, even if she didn't like banquets, it was impossible for her to stay at home all the time. This time, it involved a wide range of people, so it was a good opportunity to get to know each other. Maybe she could even meet her former close friends. Madame Luo called her eldest daughter-in-law over and carefully asked about the relevant matters. After learning that Luo Jingying received the invitation alone, she didn't say anything. But when Luo Jingying reported that Madame Luo was going to Duke Dinggua's mansion, Madame Luo nodded. Eldest daughter-in-law, go and prepare. Wan, go back and change clothes. Fifth girl, come with us. Luo Jingying's face changed slightly. Although she wanted to embarrass Luo Jingwan in Duke Dinggua's mansion, after her mother taught her a lesson yesterday, her knees still hurt. She knew that it was not wise to punish Luo Jingwan now. She quickly calmed down. Third sister and fifth sister are going with us? That's great. Madame Luo looked at her faintly, neither happy nor angry. Go back and change clothes. Is there anything wrong with granddaughter's clothes? Luo Jingying gently pursed her lips and asked with some apprehension. Madame Luo withdrew her gaze and glanced at her mother, Madame Lu. She lowered her head to drink tea and didn't speak again. Because of this glance, Madame Lu felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her gaze swept over her daughter. At first, she didn't think there was anything wrong, but when she saw Jingwan standing next to Luo Jingying, she finally understood the reason. She calmed down, walked to Luo Jingying's side and took her hand. Going out as a guest naturally can't be dressed casually like at home. Mother, it's also my fault for spoiling this girl. I have to keep an eye on her for everything. So I didn't pay attention and didn't know how to dress. I'll take her back and dress her up well. I'm sure you'll be satisfied. Madame Luo nodded indifferently. When the mother and daughter appeared, the others also dispersed. Luo Jingying was pulled away by Mrs. Lu. He was very reluctant to change his clothes, but he endured it and did not say anything. She used to dress like this when she went out, trying to dress as elegantly as possible. In addition, she was quite famous and was sought after by many young masters. These were all her assets. Today, she had spent a long time getting dressed. Back in the small courtyard of Luo Jingying, Mrs. Lu asked the maidservant to take out her clothes and jewelry. When she saw that most of the clothes were simple and elegant, she couldn't help but frown. However, there were also some colorful clothes, so she didn't have to worry. Change into it. Luo Jingying was very resistant. She didn't like the clothes her mother had picked out. If you don't want to go to Duke Dingwa's mansion, you don't have to change. Mother, why? How did I offend that grandmother again? Luo Jingying suppressed her anger and grievance. You always dress so plainly and don't have any jewelry on your body. Outsiders will think that the Luo family cheated you. Mrs. Lu said calmly. Before, when your grandmother was not here, your aunt was in charge. Even if outsiders felt something, they wouldn't say it. After all, we are two branches. Now that your grandmother is here, you are still the same. It's inevitable that people will say that your grandmother mistreats her son. Isn't this better? Good. You know that your grandmother is a kind person who loves her children and grandchildren. She hopes that all of her descendants will be well. Luo Jingying moved her lips. She seemed to understand something. Even if the person in charge was her aunt, in fact, the head of the family was still her grandmother. If her grandmother's reputation was ruined, how could they, the grandchildren, get away with it? Not to mention that their grandmother didn't mistreat them. Even if she did mistreat them, they would hide it well instead of shouting that everyone knew. Luo Jingying closed her eyes to hide all the emotions in her eyes. She let the maidservant change her clothes, comb her hair, and put on makeup for her. Mrs. Lu watched from the side. She wanted her daughter to be beautiful, but she couldn't be gaudy, and she couldn't cover up her previous elegance. It was impossible for Mrs. Lu to be outstanding in these aspects. However, she didn't stay in the Luo family for more than 10 years in vain. When she first got married, she was secretly ridiculed because of her dress. No one specifically taught her. She also watched how others did it. Little by little, she developed a good taste. She couldn't let her daughter suffer everything she did. Mrs. Lu personally chose a hairpin for her and put it in her hair. Well, Inger also looks beautiful in this. Luo Jingying looked at herself in the mirror and then looked at the maidservant's expressions. It seemed that she really looked good. Thank you, Mother. Mrs. Lu nodded. Let's go. Luo Jingying spent a lot of time. When it was time to go to the main courtyard, she seemed to be the only one left. The mother and daughter hurriedly apologized. Old Madame Luo didn't say much, and the group set off. Only then did Luo Jingying know that her grandmother and her aunt were also traveling together. Before, they didn't say anything. Was it deliberately to make her lose face? Even if she tried to restrain herself, Luo Jingying's eyes still fell on Jingwan from time to time. Compared with yesterday's dress, there was no one on her body that was the same. Although not everything was expensive, the worst was still comparable to the best on her body. They were both surnamed Luo, and they clearly had the same grandfather, but there was still such a big difference. How could people be at peace? Luo Jingying forced herself to look away. Out of sight, out of mind. The Duke of Dingwa's residence was the true leader of the nobility, and also the only duke title. The entire mansion occupied an area larger than many Junwan's manors. Not to mention, there were probably countless things inside. Because there were a lot of people today, Jingwan and the others waited in the carriage for more than half an hour before it was their turn to enter the mansion. She didn't know whether it was intentional or not, but the elders' and juniors' invitations were separated. When Luo Jingying found out that Jingwan did not receive the invitation card like her grandmother, she unconsciously straightened her back and felt a sense of pride that was hard to hide in her heart. When Jingwan inadvertently looked over, she gently waved the invitation card in her hand as if she was showing off. With a smile, she handed the invitation card over. The granny who received the invitation card smiled very kindly, which made Luo Jingying mistakenly think that she was particularly important to her. Her smile became even more arrogant. Jingwan followed beside Madame Luo with a smile and didn't say anything. Luo Jingying focused all of her attention on her. If she paid attention to other people, her mood probably wouldn't be so good. Whether it was the people in front of them or behind them, these young ladies all had invitations in their hands. Moreover, the materials and patterns of the invitations were all different. It could be inferred that Sun Yijia also sent out invitations this time. Moreover, the invitations were divided into different grades. There were probably only a few invitations that were truly made by Sun Yijia. The things that were originally precious were actually worthless. Sitting in the small sedan chair with a very rhythmic sway, they went deep into Duke Ding's mansion. Jingwan reached out to touch the materials used in the small sedan chair. Should she say that it was indeed the Sun family? How many people who could get a bolt of cloud silk would hide it like a treasure? If there was a bolt of cloud silk in the dowry, they would be able to earn a little face when showing off the dowry. However, the Sun family cut large pieces of cloud silk to decorate the sedan chair that was only used in the mansion. Should she say that they were rich and imposing, or that they had a deep background? Jingwan didn't think much of it. She lived a life of luxury and once lived on the streets. In terms of material things, she didn't have many requirements. However, in Duke Ding's mansion, there was an empress who was the mother of the world. Among the princes, Prince Kang's ability wasn't the best, but it wasn't bad either. Although His Majesty doted on noble consort Su, he wasn't biased to the ends of the earth. Prince Kang was the eldest son of the first wife. As long as he didn't make any big mistakes, the probability of him becoming the crown prince was more than 70%. This family could be said to be full of flowers and unlimited scenery. However, if they were so ostentatious and didn't restrain themselves at all, wouldn't it be like adding oil to the fire? The person who came to greet old Madame Luo was the eldest daughter-in-law of Duke Ding. She looked to be in her early 20s. She had a dignified bearing and a perfect smile. She first bowed to old Madame Luo and then intimately chatted with her. She didn't make people feel awkward when they first met because she was too enthusiastic. Jingwan believed that if it were her, she wouldn't be able to do it even after a few more decades. At most, she would be neither too close nor too distant. This was the attitude most people had towards people who met for the first time. And this person was only 10 years older than her. They could be considered to be of the same generation. As for Jingwan and the other two, she also praised them one by one without bias. Jingwan accepted it generously. Lu Jingying's face was a little red, but she didn't make a mistake. It was probably the first time Lu Jingyu faced such an occasion. She was a little nervous. However, because she was used to being wooden, she looked a little stiff. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652897. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 22. To be able to become the eldest daughter-in-law of Ding General Manor meant that she was extremely outstanding. In addition, she had been training in the backyard of Ding General Manor for nearly 10 years and assisted her mother-in-law in managing the household. Her skills and ability were better than most of the elders. Her pair of sharp eyes could be called fiery eyes. She only needed to see the nature of ordinary girls once or twice to know most of them. The number of times Luo Jingying came to Ding General Manor could be counted on one's fingers. She had seen her once, but that was the only time she said a few words. Like most girls, she was impetuous, greedy, and vainly tried to climb up the social ladder. Her inner ability was far inferior to her talent and appearance. Although the Luo family was not a particularly important family, they could not be ignored. If it were not for the fact that her mother-in-law was unable to leave, her mother-in-law would have come to greet her in person. Among the granddaughters of the Luo family, the only one who could catch the eye of this noblewoman was the eldest daughter, who had already married. But today, she was a little surprised. She glanced at Jingwan without a trace, and then looked at Madame Luo. Madame Luo's bearing was noble and graceful. Her eyes were still bright and spirited, without the slightest trace of turbidity. She was full of energy, qi, and spirit. It did not seem like she had been recuperating and had not come to the capital. Should she say that she was worthy of being the granddaughter that she had personally taught? Yesterday, she heard that this person had come to the capital. She also heard some surprising words from Madame Luo. She said that if Luo Jingying had not chosen to marry at that time, the madam in the backyard of Ding General Manor would have been Luo Jingying. Thinking about it, it was amazing. Madame Luo's choice that year surprised many people. On one side, she was a Tanhua scholar and her family was considered noble. She even had a cabinet minister, but that was in the previous dynasty. When Luo Peishan came to the capital, the Luo family basically had no foundation in the capital. On the other side, she was the heir apparent of Ding General Manor. If it was an ordinary person, they would have chosen without thinking about it. At that time, who knew how many people secretly scolded her for having water in her brain? However, anyone who knew about the situation at that time would probably not think that the Chun clan's choice was wrong. Yes, in their opinion, that was the Chun clan's choice, not his own choice. Speaking of the old madam of Ding General Manor, ever since the death of the old duke a few years ago, she had lived in seclusion and rarely met with outsiders. Even today, there were only a few people who could see her. If they were not Wang Fei and Jun Wang Fei of noble status, then it was the old madam who had a good relationship with her. But old Madame Luo, a complete stranger in the eyes of many people, received the same treatment as them. Those who saw her were all guessing which family she was from to have such an honor. They were also thinking about how to interact with her in the future. Old Madame Luo was also very surprised that old Madame's son wanted to see her. If she saw them like this, they would probably become the target of public criticism. People might even mistakenly think that the Sun family wanted to rope in the Luo family. To the Luo family, the disadvantages outweighed the advantages. But old Madame Luo did not panic at all. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. In the battle for the air position, there were a few times when it went smoothly, without bloodshed. It would be very difficult for the Luo family to completely stay out of it. When she learned that they were going to see old Madame's son, Wang Shi's heart tightened. She more or less understood the present situation. Although she did not think as thoroughly as old Madame Luo, she knew that this meeting could affect the Luo family. Luo Jingying, on the other hand, was nervous and excited. She had never met the old madam of the Sun family, but who didn't know her respected status in the Sun family. If she could catch her eye, she might be able to marry into Ding General Duke's mansion. What old Madame Luo could think of, Jingwan could think of as well. However, her thoughts were the same as old Madame Luo's. When she could not avoid it, she would face it head-on. She did not think too much, and even had the leisure to enjoy the scenery along the way. The pavilions, the winding stream of flowing goblets, and the scenery in 10 steps was probably just like that. The Sun family was really full of flowers. There were not many people here with old Madam Sunday. There were only her 2 old sisters and the few juniors they brought. Those Wang Fei and Jun Wang Fei had already left. The person they really wanted to interact with was Duchess Ding. This old madam's health was not very good, so it was enough to be polite. In terms of status, old Madam Luo naturally had to bow. Quickly rise. Old Madam Sun hurriedly called for someone to help old Madam Luo up. Old Madam Luo did not feel anything. She had some friendship with old Madam Sun when they were young, although it was not very deep. Old Madam Sun was not so calm, especially when she saw that old Madam Luo's face was much younger than hers. Old Madam Luo was clearly older than her. It was not that she was jealous, but she felt a lot of emotions. They talked about the old days, and the scene was even harmonious. It seemed that their friendship was better than when they were young. Jingwan saw that old Madam Sun wanted to say something several times, but stopped. It seemed that she had something difficult to say. In the end, she could not help but speak. Back then, was it really your choice, or was it Elder Chen's idea? She did not care about the presence of the 2 old sisters, which showed that they were really close. As for the juniors, they did not know what she was asking, so they naturally did not care. Old Madam Luo was slightly startled. She did not expect old Madam Sun to ask this. It seemed that she was quite persistent. She was already so old, so there was nothing she couldn't say. She smiled and said, "Naturally, I chose him myself." Back then, the heir of Duke Ding was very handsome and talented, but she didn't like him. Luo Peishan's family background was far inferior, but she liked him. Her family wanted her to marry down. In addition to the love of the elders and Luo Peishan's talent, the situation at that time was also one of the factors. However, it was not the main reason for her to marry down. Even if there was no Luo Peishan, it would be someone else. She would never marry the heir of Duke Ding at that time. "You are a courageous person," old Madam Sun said. Duke Ding's mansion. How respected was the status? How many people could refuse that honor? Everyone said that she was lucky. Her family background was not the best, and she was not the most outstanding person. She was not even a candidate, but in the end, she got a big bargain. Was it really a bargain? Who knew what it was like to be a mother after marrying into the family? Who knew what it was like to be married for less than 3 months, and her husband took back his sweetheart? Her concubine jumped around and schemed. Her eldest son almost died. She struggled as if she was in a quagmire. She became ruthless and unscrupulous. Her husband took in new favor one after another. In terms of virtuousness, who could compare with her? The sons of concubines came one after another. She raised them well. Even if she won in the end, her husband died. Her son became the duke, and she became the most distinguished person in the backyard. So what? After entering Duke Ding's mansion, she had never been truly happy for a day. Luo Peishan only had one concubine son, and he did not like him. Old Madam Luo had not been by his side for many years, and he did not pamper her. Everyone knew that the Luo family was strict, and Luo Peishan respected his wife. That was a blessing. Old Madam Luo was well aware of it, but she smiled and said nothing. "All the girls in your family are good-looking." Old Madam Sun carefully looked at Jingwan and her 2 sisters. Jingwan did not want to deal with these shrewd old madams. She bowed her head in a timely manner to show her shyness. Luo Jingying, on the other hand, seemed to feel that she finally had a chance. She faced old Madam Sun with a sweet smile. "Old Madam Sun, you flatter me. Who in the capital doesn't say that Sister Sun is the best?" Duke Ding had 7 or 8 brothers, but old Madam Sun only had 2 sons. Sun Yijia was her only legitimate granddaughter. Sun Yijia was good-looking and smart, so she was naturally very fond of her. She was naturally happy to be praised, even if the person's thoughts were obvious. She smiled kindly and said a few words to Luo Jingying. However, when she saw that old Madam Luo did not ask anything, she knew that this girl was actually not liked by her. If she really cared about her, how could she be so indulgent? No matter how good her own children were, They would be modest and praise other people's children. This was normal. Old Madam Sun's eyes paused on Jingwan for a while, and she also asked a few simple questions. She was less than Luo Jingying, and then Luo Jingyu. I think it's better to ask them to go play. It's boring to accompany us old women here. Old Madam Luo knew that she had to stay to talk about this matter. She might have seen her before because of some persistence, but now she probably had a deeper meaning. She echoed old Madam Sun's words. Jingwan and the others, including Madam Wang, bowed and left. Digression. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652901. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicon.com. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicon.com. Chapter 23. Luo Jingying smiled brightly and greeted the other girls. They were all people she knew. Intentionally or unintentionally, she isolated Jingwan. As for Luo Jingyu, even if she was stabbed twice by this wooden man yesterday, she still didn't take her seriously. These girls were also smart people. When they thought of their sisters, what else did they not know? However, they didn't let Luo Jingying do as she wished. She chatted with Jingwan and slowly became familiar with her. Along the way, they also talked and laughed. Even Luo Jingyu was not left out. Has your third daughter been engaged? When they left the courtyard, old Madam Sun suddenly asked. When I was in Qian Prefecture, I exchanged letters with my relatives. My third brother mentioned his eldest grandson's marriage earlier. I intend to marry my third daughter to him. A few days ago, she went to the capital to take the imperial exam and lived in my eldest brother's house. I also saw her yesterday. She is a good child. I was about to tell my third brother about their marriage. They will get married in 2 years. Old Madam Luo said. That's a pity. I was thinking that if your third daughter hasn't been decided yet, she will be matched to my brother Lin. Hearing her words, the two old madams next to her couldn't help but show a strange expression. Sun Yilin was the fifth son of Duke Dinghua, the third son of Duke Dinghua's wife, and the elder brother of Sun Yijia. He was 17 years old. Not only did he have a dignified appearance, but his talent and learning made him one of the 4 heroes of the capital. Among the 4, he was the youngest. It was fine if that was all, but his character was also first class. He had never been a virgin. Even Jin Shang, whose attitude towards the Sun family was somewhat ambiguous, really liked him. From time to time, he would call him into the palace to play chess. Every time, he would not return empty-handed. Such a person, even if he didn't inherit Duke Dinghua's mansion, his future was promising. Many unmarried women secretly admired him, not to mention those who wanted to climb up Duke Dinghua's mansion. Sun Yilin was simply a big piece of delicious fat meat. However, because he was too outstanding and his conditions were too good, ordinary people didn't dare to recommend their own family members. Just like the 2 old ladies who had a good relationship with old Madam Sun, they felt that their granddaughter wasn't good enough for Sun Yilin. Even if they were scratching their hearts and lungs, they endured it and didn't mention it to old Madam Sunday. This was definitely the first time old Madam Sun had taken the initiative to mention it. She must be joking, right? Fortunately, old Madam Luo refused. Otherwise, who knew how many people would vomit to death? Old Madam Sun mentioned such a girl whose father was not prominent and who was not very outstanding. Then what about her own outstanding daughters and granddaughters? The 2 old madams' hearts stirred. Perhaps this old sister of theirs did not have high expectations for Brother Lin's wife? In their eyes, old Madam Luo refused so straightforwardly because she didn't understand Sun Yilin's situation. Otherwise, even if her granddaughter was engaged, she would have secretly withdrawn. Friendship was important, but sometimes it was a joke. In fact, she knew a little about a young master like Sun Yilin, who was famous in the capital. If Sun Yilin wasn't born in the Sun family, old Madame Luo might be tempted by other families, even if their families were more complicated. However, it was the Sun family. The Sun family was extremely complicated. If she entered such a place, even if her husband doted on her, her Wan wouldn't have a good life. Halfway through, Wang Shi was pulled away by someone she knew. She gave Jingwan and the others a few words. Jingwan and the others went to the garden where many young ladies lived. It was built by the lake. There were winding corridors and pavilions built on the lake. In the middle of the lake, a corner of the lake was covered with large lotus leaves. Although it was not the season for lotus flowers to bloom, it looked very charming. On the side, there were hundreds of flowers competing with each other. All kinds of famous products were intertwined. There were also rockery of different shapes. As for the peach forest further away, it was in full bloom. It looked like a fairyland. In twos and threes, women competed with each other. They were either admiring the flowers, feeding the fish, or whispering. However, the place with the most people was quiet. The woman who seemed to be surrounded by stars seemed to be painting. Her eyebrows were lowered, and she was serious and beautiful. Needless to say, that was Sun Yijia. Luo Jingying walked over quickly. After a few steps, she seemed to have thought of something and turned around. Third sister, fifth sister, I saw two good friends. I want to go over and say hello. Look, you go. Don't worry about us. We'll just take a look. Jingwan didn't ask Luo Jingyu and said on her own. This. Luo Jingying seemed to be a little embarrassed. How about we go together? I'll introduce them to you. You sisters have a lot to talk about. Even if you want to introduce them to us, you don't have to be in a hurry. She said good friends, so they were naturally good friends. However, Jingwan was really not interested in knowing her good friends. Third sister, if you have anything to say, just send someone to tell me. Okay. Jingwan smiled and nodded. She wanted to show a deep sisterly love. At the moment, Jingwan didn't mind accompanying her. Luo Jingying nodded apologetically to the few people next to her and then left. Sure enough, she pulled two good friends and asked them what they were talking about. A girl next to Jingwan suddenly smiled and said, I've seen your second young lady before. She's very protective of your fourth young lady. Why didn't she come with you today? It's almost second sister's big day. Oh, she's embroidering the dowry at home and doesn't go out. I seem to remember that your third sister likes simple and elegant clothes. She's usually like a fairy. Why did she change her preferences today? Your second sister, on the other hand, is quite solemn. Liking good things naturally won't stay the same. Even if it's a preference, it won't always stay with her, right? Second sister is indeed a good sister. If Luo Jingqiang wasn't good, would she be willing to become Luo Jingying's little attendant? If she wasn't good, would she be able to wear old Chen's clothes and become a green leaf to set off Luo Jingying, this delicate flower? How many girls didn't like to be delicate and charming? Every family had a similar situation. It was just that it wasn't obvious. Everyone was well aware of it. Jingwan looked towards the direction of the voice. It was a familiar voice. Sure enough, it was eldest aunt's cousin Yuan Xiao. She quickly walked in front of her. Cousin. Xiao and Jingwan are cousins? The girl who spoke to Jingwan just now was very surprised. That's right. My mother's surname is Luo. Wan and I are blood-related cousins. Yuan Xiao hooked her arm around Jingwan's arm. Shuang, Wan has become familiar with you since she first came to the capital. Wan and I also hit it off very well when we first met. It's clearly fate. I didn't even know that your maternal grandfather was Luo Shangshu. Zhou Shuang seemed to be a little angry. Yuan Xiao very ungracefully rolled her eyes at her. We only knew each other before. Our true friendship only happened a month ago. You didn't ask me about my family's situation. It's not too late to find out now. Zhou Shuang wasn't really angry. You and Jingwan are cousins, and so are you with Luo Jingying. Why do you act like you don't know her? Otherwise, I would have known that you were related to the Luo family. I don't like her. Why would I bother with her? Yuan Xiaoqiao had actually made it clear to Luo Jingying that they should act like they didn't know each other outside. If she came looking for them, they shouldn't blame her for embarrassing her. Luo Jingying had her own pride. In addition, her mother always wanted to be on good terms with her eldest aunt. Naturally, she didn't dare to make her presence known in front of Yuan Xiaoqiao. You're still like this. You don't even know how to hide it. Zhou Yingshuang was quite helpless with her temper. I can't help it. I'm just like this. Yuan Xiaoqiao said carelessly. Let's go. Let's talk over there. With one in each hand, she pulled Jingwan and Zhou Yingshuang away. She didn't care about the people around her. Therefore, Yuan Xiaoqiao was sometimes really hated by people. Zhou Yingshuang could only wave at them, indicating that they could do as they pleased. Yuan Xiaoqiao excitedly told Jingwan about the no discord, no friendship between her and Zhou Yingshuang a month ago. Jingwan listened quietly and smiled. It was really a small quarrel between young girls. With her age and life experience, it was naturally impossible for her to be as lively as them. However, she didn't mind being a good listener. After talking about interesting things, the three of them began to admire the flowers in the garden. The further they walked, the fewer people there were. As expected of Duke Ding's mansion. What kind of flowers are these? I've never seen them before, but they look really beautiful. Yuan Xiaoqiao reached out and touched the beautiful flowers in front of her. Jingwan smiled faintly and then began to explain to Yuan Xiaoqiao the names of the flowers, their characteristics, their value, and so on. She was not in a hurry and was very detailed. Yuan Xiaoqiao looked at Jingwan in amazement. Wan, you're amazing. You know so much about them. Zhou Yingshuang also couldn't help but nod. I just like them, so I know more about them. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652902. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 24. Young Master Lin. Yuan Xiaoqiao and Zhou Yingshuang were both surprised and overjoyed at the same time. The two words involuntarily slipped out of their mouths. Yuan Xiaoqiao even restrained her temper and instantly turned into a virtuous lady. Greetings to the three ladies. Sun Yilin greeted. Jingwan squatted and returned the greeting. Greetings to the young master. The two girls, who seemed to be infatuated with him, returned to their senses and greeted him. However, it wasn't entirely their fault. It was normal for a handsome young master like him to attract the admiration of young ladies. This one is also a lover of flowers. Just now, I passed by and overheard the ladies' conversation. I was so happy that I acted abruptly. Please forgive me. I only hope that I didn't disturb your mood. Sun Yilin was truly apologetic. However, it was obvious who he was targeting. However, the two girls who shook their heads didn't seem to notice. We didn't disturb you. Young master doesn't need to mind. Jingwan felt helpless at their reactions. That's good. Sun Yilin wanted to say something else, but the servant behind him whispered something. Sun Yilin turned around and looked into the distance. I originally wanted to ask the young lady for advice, but I'm afraid I'll have to wait for the next time. I hope the young lady won't be stingy with her advice. Young master is too polite. This one will take his leave first. Sun Yilin bowed again before turning to leave. All right, he's already far away. It's time to return to your senses. Jingwan waved her hand in front of the two girls. When the two girls saw her teasing them, they felt anger in their hearts. They looked at each other and reached out to tickle her. Jingwan hid while begging for mercy. The three of them were in a mess. Which slut is so shameless to openly seduce Brother Lin in public? An extremely arrogant and domineering voice sounded. The three girls stopped and looked towards the source of the voice. A woman dressed in red, her body like fire, was angrily rushing toward them. When she was only a few steps away, the whip in her hand had already lashed out. The whip was clearly covered with thin thorns. If it hit the body, it might split open the flesh. If it hit the face, Jingwan and the others were pulled from behind by someone, and they barely managed to avoid it. It turned out that when they saw the situation, the maidservants and mamas, who were not far away, hurried forward and pulled the three people apart in time. But when the first whip missed, the second one fell. A maidservant rushed out from behind Jingwan and the others and directly faced the whip. She grabbed it tightly and wrapped it around her arm twice before hugging it tightly. "Miss, how can you be so unreasonable?" This person was none other than Jingwan's maidservant, Qingju. This maidservant was a little reckless, but she was truly loyal to her master. Whether it was Zhou Shuang, Yuan Xiaoqiao, or even the woman, they all had expressions of disbelief on their faces. "Let go." The woman withdrew her hand, but the whip did not move an inch. No, Qingju didn't care about her bleeding hand, and didn't care about the identity of the woman in front of her. She only knew that if she let go, she might hurt her young lady, so she was determined not to let go. "How dare you? Why aren't you pulling this bitch away? I don't care if you beat her to death." The group of maidservants behind the woman stepped forward and waved their hands to hit Qingju's face. Jingwan was furious. She already knew who this woman was, but it was really better to see her in person than to hear about her. This was the first time she had met such an unreasonable person. She wanted to step forward to help, but was stopped by Mammy Gong. "Miss, please step back. Let this servant do it." Seeing Jingwan's doubtful gaze, Mammy Gong said, "Don't worry, Mississippi. This servant has learned some martial arts." Sure enough, Mammy Gong stepped forward and blocked the maidservants. Just as she was about to remove the whip from the woman's hand, "Ruyu, what are you doing? Quickly stop." The woman with the youthful voice was flustered and exasperated. It was Sun Ijia, followed by a large group of people. The woman, who had always been calm and aloof, had anger in her eyes and walked faster than usual. When Sun Ijia came closer, Qingju had already let go of the whip under Mammy Gong's signal. When Sun Ijia saw the blood on the whip, anger rushed to her head and she felt waves of headache. She looked around and saw that only a maidservant's hand was injured. She heaved a sigh of relief. "Why are you hitting people again?" Faced with Sun Ijia, the woman didn't continue to swing the whip. However, her temper didn't subside. "Why don't you ask these bitches what they did? They're all lowly creatures who secretly tried to seduce older brother Lin. Don't they deserve to be hit?" No matter how good a person's temper was, they would still fly into a rage after hearing this. Jingwan's face darkened. "Miss, you should watch your mouth. So you're saying that the bitch is you?" The woman pointed the whip at Jingwan. "Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? How dare you try to get close to older brother Lin? Older brother Lin likes flowers. Do you think that you can fly to the branch and become a phoenix just because you showed off a little?" Jingwan could still hold back, but Yuan Xiaoqiao was about to explode in anger. She wanted nothing more than to rush up and tear the woman in red apart. Jingwan pulled her back. She was the one who caused this trouble. The other party was of noble status. If they became enemies, they would often find trouble in the future. She didn't want Yuan Xiaoqiao to be implicated as well. However, it was said that beautiful women were the source of trouble. In fact, beautiful women were also the source of trouble. I recognized flowers when I was 3 and grew flowers when I was 5. It can be said that flowers are my companions every day. However, I just arrived in the capital a few days ago, and I don't know many people in the capital. Who am I showing off to? Which noble branch did I climb up to? On the other hand, you, miss, look like someone of noble status. However, you're vulgar and rude. You don't have the slightest bit of propriety and upbringing that a woman of the boudoir should have. If I were the older brother Lin you mentioned, I would definitely stay as far away as possible from people like you. I don't want to be associated with you and make myself look vulgar." The woman in red was so angry that her whole body trembled. "You really have guts. You dare to speak to this imperial princess like this." Many people broke out in cold sweat for Jingwan. They knew clearly what kind of person she was. Normally, she was unruly and willful. Whenever she was associated with Sun Yilin, she would become like a mad dog. Naturally, there were also people like Luo Jingying. They were indescribably happy and couldn't wait for Jingwan to thoroughly anger the woman in red. It would be best if she smashed her face with a whip. Imperial princess? When others thought that Jingwan would give in, Jingwan sneered. As a woman of the imperial family, you should be a role model for all the women in the world. However, with someone like you, other than tarnishing the reputation of the imperial family, what else can you do? You. Unable to restrain her anger, the whip was about to strike again. "Li Ruyu, do you dare to try?" Sun Yilin's gentle voice became somewhat gloomy as he returned. Li Ruyu's hand trembled, and she immediately hid the whip behind her back. When she looked at Sun Yilin, she already revealed a charming smile. "Lin Gij, why are you here? Don't you also have guests today?" The person who was usually gentle, like Jade, now had a sullen face. "You are indeed vulgar, rude, and rude. Not only tarnishing the reputation of the imperial family, but also disgracing our Sun family. I don't care about your usual behavior, but you are becoming more and more unscrupulous. I will clearly tell you now, even if I, Sun Yilin, become a monk in this life, I will never take you, Li Ruyu, as my wife." Everyone knew that Li Ruyu liked Sun Yilin. However, because the two of them were of noble birth, there were some things that they didn't say. Even though they knew that if Li Ruyu really married Sun Yilin, it would be a waste of a good man, no one dared to say anything. Moreover, the two families didn't make a clear statement, ambiguous and unclear. However, today's banquet seemed to be announcing some kind of decision to the world. Originally, they thought that after today, perhaps Sun Yilin's marriage would be clear. However, before the banquet ended, Sun Yilin suddenly became so resolute and directly tore off Li Ruyu's face, throwing it on the ground and ruthlessly stepping on it. With so many people present, it was impossible to seal the mouth. After today, Li Ruyu would definitely become the laughingstock of the entire capital. Li Ruyu was as if she was struck by lightning. "Lin Gij, you, I did this all because of you. Why are you so heartless? Don't say that it's because of me. I can't bear this kind of reputation. The little bit of relationship between us was already worn away by you. As for being heartless, can it be compared to you, who casually stains people's blood and takes people's lives? I will personally talk to my aunt and ask her to find 2 etiquette instructors for you. If you can't learn the rules, it's best that you never appear in front of me, so as to avoid making people feel disgusted." A person who was usually modest and polite was even more venomous when he spoke. https://www.bicken.com/11/118076652903. HTML. We will handle it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 25. You believe Aunt's words to coax a 3-year-old child? There should be a limit to self-deception. At this moment, Sun Yilin was really cold and heartless. Seeing Li Ruyu's pitiful appearance, Sun Yijia couldn't bear it. She wanted her brother to speak less, but when she saw Sun Yilin's face as calm as still water, and his eyes were filled with anger, impatience, and disgust, Sun Yijia chose to keep her mouth shut. She also didn't like Li Ruyu, her cousin, and didn't want her to be her sister-in-law. It would be best if she could make her give up after today. Otherwise, it would be good if she could change her temper. "Brother Lin, how could you do this to me? You can't. Li Ruyu spoke incoherently. Her hair was a little messy, and her expression was a little dazed. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. "It's that bitch, isn't it? You've been bewitched by her. You must have been bewitched by her. I want to kill her. I want to kill her." Li Ruyu madly rushed towards Jingwan. Sun Yilin grabbed her and gave her a forceful shove. If it weren't for the servant girls blocking her, she would have fallen to the ground. "Immediately send your princess back to the prince's residence. Later, I will personally visit Aunt." "Oh, the Duke of Ding's residence is really unusually lively today." Before Li Ruyu's people could respond to Sun Yilin, another person interrupted. However, what surprised Jingwan was that even though it was a very pleasant voice, everyone present, including Yuan Xiaoqiao and Zhou Shuang, couldn't help but stiffen. It was as if their natural enemy had arrived. The one with the most obvious reaction was Li Ruyu. She wasn't as arrogant and domineering as she was at the beginning, nor was she dazed after the painful blow. She was like a little chick that had been fished out of the water, trembling involuntarily. What was even stranger was that she frantically wiped away her tears. Jingwan was shocked. Who was this person? How could he be so powerful? Sun Yilin took a deep breath, then turned around. "Greetings to the 3 Imperial Highnesses. May the Imperial Highnesses live for thousands and thousands of years." With him taking the lead, everyone else followed suit and paid their respects to the 3 Imperial Highnesses. "You may rise." The eldest prince, Prince Kong, helped Sun Yilin up. "May I know why the 3 princes have come?" As the host, even though Sun Yilin was in a bad mood because of Li Ruyu, he still had to raise his spirits to deal with it. "What? The threshold of Ding General Duke's mansion is even higher than the Imperial Palace. Can't I step in for no reason?" Li Honyuan said with a faint smile. Among the 3 of them, he was the last one. He shouldn't have spoken, but he didn't seem to take his 2 elder brothers seriously. Sun Yijia could only be mentally and physically exhausted in the face of this living king of hell. "Your Highness must be joking." She knew that she couldn't say that, but she didn't dare to follow his instructions. If she dared to say "not high," Li Honyuan could go in and out of Ding General Manor as if it were his own, even if it was the backyard. She couldn't expect him to avoid taboo. "Do you think this prince is joking with you?" Li Honyuan leisurely walked in front of Sun Yilin. What was Li Ruyu? She was the one who was truly unreasonable. So insolent. Jingwan already knew the other person's identity. The current emperor's 6th son, Su Guifei's adopted son, Li Hongyuan, the Jin Qinhuang who was said to have a bad reputation. When he was young, he was a famous devil incarnate. As he gradually grew up, he became the living king of hell. Whoever provoked him would be unlucky. Jingwan knew that if she met Li Ruyu, she would only have endless troubles in the future. If she met this one, she might bring disaster to the entire Luo family. So she lowered her eyes and tried to reduce her presence as much as possible. However, she always felt that there was a line of sight that fell on her from time to time, as if she was being watched by someone. Besides, Li Hongyuan, no matter what his heart was like, he would never let people know that his attention was on Jingwan. He didn't care about Sun Yilin, who was frozen and didn't know how to answer him. He directly walked in front of Li Ruyu. What happened to Ruyu? Did Sun Yilin bully you? Tell 6th brother. 6th brother will help you teach him a lesson. Not to mention Sun Yijia. Even Kang Wang's breathing became sluggish. He was afraid that Li Hongyuan would take the opportunity to make things difficult for Sun Yilin. On the other hand, Rui Wang was leisurely watching from aside. If Li Hongyuan really crippled Sun Yilin, he would sincerely call him 6th brother. Many thanks for Wang Ye's concern. Nothing happened to Ruyu. Is that so? Li Hongyuan took the whip from her hand and raised it to gently rub her neck. Although he wasn't clear about the details, but looking at the current situation and thinking of Li Ruyu's personality, it was obvious that the person in his heart was bullied. Then he thought of his previous life, Jingwan's tragic end. This woman also played an important role. With the new hatred and old hatred, Li Hongyuan almost couldn't suppress his anger. He really wanted to wring her neck. Sure enough, The lesson he gave her was far from enough. The thin thorns on the whip scraped her skin. It was a little painful, but Li Ruyu didn't dare to dodge. Even if Li Hongyuan's attacks were getting heavier and heavier, she still endured it. She felt that this cousin was like a ferocious beast right now. He could swallow her alive in the next moment. It was more terrifying than ever. Li Ruyu was about to cry, but she didn't dare to. He hated women crying. The more pitiful they cried, the more miserable their ending would be. Ruyu, it's not good for a girl to play with a whip. You should be at home copying the women's commandments, learning the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, or embroidery is also good. You are an imperial daughter. How can you do something as degrading as hitting people? Don't do this again in the future, okay? In 3 months, you will let the world know that you are the most qualified imperial daughter, right? He couldn't kill her, but that didn't stop him from using a blunt knife to cut her soft ribs. His voice was so pleasant that it made people feel them all over. It was as if he was whispering in the ear of his beloved. It was so gentle that Li Ruyu almost couldn't stand still. His whole body kept trembling, and he began to stutter. Your Highness is right. Ruyu will definitely be the most. Are you cold? Then go back early. Girls can't be cold. If you hurt your body, what will happen if it affects your children in the future? Li Honyuan lightly interrupted her words. However, the meaning in those words was enough to make any girl feel fear. The most gentle words could be the most deadly poison. Your Highness is right. Ruyu will leave. If you don't do as he says, he will most likely make his words come true. Good girl. Li Honyuan took a step back and casually waved the whip in his hand. The tip of the whip cut through Li Ruyu's clothes and hit a maidservant with a bang. The maidservant's clothes were torn and her flesh was exposed. The maidservant let out a short scream and hurriedly covered her mouth. The pain on her body was not important, but the fear in her heart was suffocating. Regarding these princes and princes, Jingwan had a very general understanding from Nanigong. This was her first time as a bystander, so she had a more intuitive understanding of them. They were temperamental, cruel, and ruthless. If possible, it was best to never face them directly. If it was someone else, there might be a possibility that this wish would come true. As for Jingwan, she had been targeted by the great demon a few years ago. How could he let her escape from his palm? She still didn't know, so she should enjoy her freedom for the time being. When the great demon made his move, she would suffer. After sending Li Ruyu away, Li Hongyuan's eyes lazily looked around at the people present. There are quite a lot of beauties. His words made many people subconsciously step back. They were annoyed and regretful. Why did they come to join in the fun? Wasn't it better to learn from those who didn't come? Prince Jean, aren't you a hardcore supporter of noble consort Su? Why did you come to Duke Ding's residence for no reason? Li Honyuan saw the crowd's reaction and sneered. A bunch of self-righteous women. He had been blind for a long time in his previous life. How could he continue to be blind in this life? Even if she was really a heavenly beauty, she couldn't compare to a single finger of his Wan. He raised his chin slightly and seemed to look down on the crowd. In fact, he only saw a figure. It was as if he could bury everyone except himself and Wan alive. Then he could hug Wan and do whatever he wanted. Therefore Li Hongyuan was so unreasonable now. His heart was so dark. The feeling of being targeted became more obvious. This time, it was definitely not an illusion. Jingwan frowned slightly. Seeing that the situation was in a deadlock, Prince Kong gave his third brother a look, telling him to discipline this bastard. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652904. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition. Chapter 26. I didn't know that several Wangya had graced us with your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. Several old Furin were supported by others. They looked a little out of breath, with slight sweat on their foreheads. It was clear that they had rushed over. Jingwan looked at old Furin Luo's appearance, and her complexion was not good. Although when she was in Qianfu, she also made her grandmother move more and sweat more, but the current situation was forced. Naturally, it was impossible for her to be happy. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's expression. In the previous life, he was not clear about the matters before Jingwan's marriage, but one thing had never changed. That was old Furin Luo's sincere love for Jingwan. To let this old Furin suffer, Jingwan could not help but remember it in her heart. For Wan's sake, he did not mind showing her some respect. Seeing that several old Furin were about to kneel, enough, stand. A group of young ones did not kneel to Ben Wang, but a group of old ones kneeling. Do you want Ben Wang's life to be shortened? Well, it was obviously good intentions. After saying these words, who could understand his good intentions? He even overturned a group of young ones. They were all hesitating whether to make up for this big ceremony of kneeling. Whatever the living king of hell said, it was naturally what it was. Naturally, it would not be good to kneel in the name of asking for forgiveness. Old Furin Sun stood calmly. These people were old and experienced. In fact, they all saw it clearly. Although Jin Qinhuang was a scoundrel, he still kept his bottom line. He would not touch people who should not be touched. Even if he did, it was usually to teach them a lesson. He rarely killed or crippled them. Several Wangya, why don't you come to the inner hall and have a cup of tea? Old Furin Sun said. The garden is very good. Ben Wang heard that old Madam Sun wants to choose a granddaughter-in-law. Why don't we let them perform well in the garden, so that Ben Wang can see what kind of girl is worthy of the future pillar of our Qiyuan dynasty? Maybe Ben Wang can help. Ben Wang may not have other abilities, but when it comes to choosing a woman, I think I still have some eyesight. Old Madam Sun sighed in her heart. A good banquet had been ruined by this king of hell. Originally, she wanted to use this opportunity to choose a granddaughter-in-law, but it was not only for Sun Yilin. She also had a few grandsons who had reached the age of marriage. Although they were not as good as Sun Yilin, she still wanted them to do well. Now, it had become a wife selection banquet for Sun Yilin. Perhaps he could really settle his beloved grandson's marriage today. That would be good too, because Sun Yilin was too outstanding. His mother always wanted to give him the best. However, his father was worried that the power behind him was too strong and had greater ambitions, coveting the position of Duke Ding and causing the brothers to turn against each other. Therefore, he wanted to suppress him, and those 7 aunts and 8 aunts also wanted him to become a son-in-law. Many parties were in a deadlock, so the person was delayed. Now that Jin Qinhuang intervened, no matter who was chosen, everyone could only pinch their noses and recognize it. Your Highness's eyesight is naturally not bad. Then I will have to trouble your Highness. Nyang. A slightly sharp voice sounded. Looking for the source of the voice. Very good. Several Wangfei, Jun Wangfei, and Duchess Ding took the lead. A group of noblewomen finally arrived. The scene was really getting more and more lively. Li Hongyuan's last words were heard by Duchess Ding, but she could only suppress her anger and pay her respects first. Li Hongyuan nodded. As for the Wangfei, who was an elder, he just perfunctorily cupped his hands, but no one picked a bone because of it. Jin Qinhuang. Marriage should be the order of the parents and the words of the matchmaker. Even the emperor can't rashly decide the marriage of an official, not to mention you are just. Duchess Ding was really angry. She couldn't understand. How could her own old madam compromise with the other party? Others were afraid of him. But how could Duke Ding be afraid? Li Hongyuan smiled indifferently. That smile without any negative emotions really had the feeling of captivating all living things. He didn't look at Duchess Ding, but beckoned to Sun Yilin. Come here. Sun Yilin exhaled, composed himself, and stepped forward. What is Wang Ye's order? Li Hongyuan reached out and put his hand on the back of Sun Yilin's neck. How about staying in this Wangfu for 7 days? Jin Qinhuang. Duchess Ding's voice was sharp and somewhat harsh. When she said 7 days, who wouldn't think of 7 days of favor? He didn't cripple Sun Yilin, let alone kill him. The other party just invited him to stay for 7 days. Even if it was in front of the emperor would at most scold him. Jin Qinhuang loved beauties, regardless of gender. It was good to know these things. If it was really made out, then it would really be a loss of face. The emperor would never allow it. Playing around in private, the old man wouldn't care, but it was related to the imperial family's face. Even Duke Ding couldn't afford it. For Duchess Ding, there was nothing more threatening than this. I'll have to trouble Wang Ye to choose a wife for my son. Duchess Ding said, almost gnashing her teeth. Well said. Li Hongyuan retracted his hand and responded indifferently. Li Hongming, Prince Ruwei, was about to clap his hands and cheer. For him, Sun Yilin had no official position or title, but he couldn't stand Fu Wang liking him. So the threat multiplied. Now his marriage was held by his own people. He really wanted to go forward and pat Li Hongyuan on the shoulder and say, "Good sixth, brother." To be honest, Li Hongyuan was annoying, but when he did things, he was deeply popular. The efficiency of the servants of Duke Dinggu's mansion was also first class. As soon as he gave the order, by the time everyone went over, the area by the lake had been completely rearranged. In the process, the children of each family basically found their own adults and didn't dare to laugh, as before. When Madame Luo came, she saw Jingwan in the innermost position. It would be a lie to say that she wasn't worried. However, now was not the time to ask. She just patted her hand and stroked her slightly messy hair to comfort her. Jingwan also shook her head at Madame Luo, indicating that she was fine. When no one was paying attention, she whispered a few words in Madame Luo's ear. Sun Yilin, Hua, Li Ruyu. In summary, it could be summed up in 4 words. An unexpected disaster. These words were enough for Madame Luo to understand most of it. Her eyes flashed slightly, but she remained calm. At this moment, Madame Wang came over with her eldest daughter, who was married. Madame Luo hadn't seen her eldest granddaughter for many years. She looked at her carefully and saw that her face was ruddy and she was dressed properly. It meant that she didn't suffer any grievances in her husband's family, so she was relieved and kept her by her side. After Jingwan nodded, Qingju followed the servants of Duke Ding's mansion to treat the wound on her hand. Fortunately, it only looked serious, but the actual situation was much better. On the other side, Kang Wang and the Sun family stayed behind a little. Wang Yi, why did Jin Qinhuang suddenly come to our Duke Ding's mansion? Old Madame Sun asked. Kang Wang was also angry with Li Hongyuan, sometimes wanting to eat him alive. In reality, he could only think about it. Before he came, he tried to dissuade him, but that bastard just liked to go against him. Don't talk about forcefully stopping him. Even if his attitude was a little tougher, that bastard could make a scene outside the imperial study. He was just smashing a broken jar and didn't care about whether Fu Huang would punish him or not. But Kang Wang couldn't and didn't dare. Faced with his own grandmother's inquiry, he could only forcibly suppress his anger. Today, he entered the palace to see imperial concubine Su and also paid his respects to Muhu. But he didn't pay his respects to Fu Huang. Fu Huang angrily scolded him for being unfilial and called him to the imperial study. In front of several courtiers, he scolded him. When he came out, he told Ben Wang that he heard that there was a banquet at Duke Ding's mansion today and came over. As for Li Hongming, Kang Wang sneered. The meaning was self-evident. Very good. Their Duke Ding's mansion was purely implicated by the emperor. Jin Qinhuang was angered by his own father and happened to meet Kang Wang, who then caught Duke Ding's mansion. So, if you weren't unlucky, who would be unlucky? But the root of the disaster was the emperor. Even if they wanted to secretly retaliate, they couldn't. So they could only endure it. It was just that Sun Yilin was wronged. Old Madame Sun looked at her beloved grandson and sighed softly. And Duke Ding's foreign, who was usually a strong-willed woman, was about to cry when she saw her son at this time. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have been so picky and decided on a daughter-in-law candidate early. Then, there wouldn't have been today's disaster. In any case, in their view, Li Hongyuan would definitely not choose a good girl for Sun Yilin. Fortunately, among the girls present today, even the worst ones still had some redeeming qualities. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652905. HTML chapter error. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 27. In fact, they really thought too much. Li Hongyuan came to Dingwa Fu purely because the person he wanted to see was here. To him, being scolded by his imperial father was nothing compared to wind passing by one ear and one ear. How could he be angry because of this? As for the other unexpected situations after he came, it was just a matter of convenience. Sun Yilin, seeing that he helped Jingwan out of her predicament, seeing that he was indeed a pillar of the country in the future, he really didn't want to make things difficult for him. After receiving the comforting words from his younger sister and cousin Kangwang, Sun Yilin smiled. He really didn't care. That's right, Nyang, our fu should be properly cleaned up. I just said a few words to someone and didn't go far when Li Ruyu came to find trouble with them. In the end, Hu told her, if the people in the fu can be easily bought by her, then they can be bought by people outside. In this way, as long as there's a bit of trouble in our fu, wouldn't it immediately be known to the world? Duchess Dingwa Fu's face sank. My son, don't worry, this kind of thing won't happen again. If it wasn't for Li Ruyu making a ruckus, even if Jin Qinhuang came, it might not have attracted his attention. He couldn't afford to provoke Jin Qinhuang and couldn't deal with Li Ruyu. But to deal with the traitors in his fu, it was as simple as crushing ants. The guests who came to Dingwa Fu, including those who didn't go to see the excitement before, were all gathered together. The men's and women's seats were separated. There weren't many people in the men's seats, but they were the object of everyone's attention. Whether it was those unmarried girls or their elders, there weren't many who didn't have complicated feelings. Perhaps they were excited and nervous because they knew what their own conditions were. Under normal circumstances, they absolutely had no chance to become Sun Yilin's wife. Now that Jin Qinhuang intervened, the most unlikely person was more likely. If they could marry such a person, they could suddenly get what countless women wanted in their lifetime: a noble status, glory, splendor, wealth, and an outstanding husband. Perhaps they were conflicted and embarrassed because they originally had a chance, but now it seemed bleak. But to give up like this, they were very unwilling, and to perform in public for them was simply playing to the gallery. What was the difference between this and humiliation? Or perhaps she was apprehensive and afraid. What if Jin Qinhuang took a fancy to her? If it was a woman of low status, even if Jin Qinhuang's reputation was unbearable, if she was fancied by him, she would be climbing up a high branch. Moreover, his face was so outstanding that women in the boudoir would be easily bewitched by him. The premise was that he was willing to give her a status. However, up until now, Jin Wangfu did not have any woman with a status, even if she was only a concubine, regardless of her background. Because of all these reasons, no one took the initiative to show off their talents. Li Hongyuan was not in a hurry. He picked up a piece of dessert, took a bite, and threw the rest back. As for the rest in his mouth, he directly picked up the teacup and spat it into the cup. Although there was no expression of displeasure, his actions were enough to show his disdain. With Li Hongyuan's disdain, the people of Duke Ding's fu naturally hurriedly called for people to change the tea and desserts. Originally, they wanted to put out 10 or 20 types of desserts to let him have a choice, but that would be very unsightly. The servants fearfully put out 5 or 6 types of desserts, and there were still spares at the back. When they saw that the situation was not good, they immediately changed them. However, Li Hongyuan did not find fault and did not even stretch out his hand. That's right, in their eyes he was just finding fault, and no one thought that he really did not like it. Because it was Li Hongyuan who brought it up, Kang Wang and Rui Wang did not interrupt. They were afraid that if they opened their mouths, this living king of hell would be displeased and turn around to find trouble with them. Li Hongyuan was merciless to Kang Wang, but don't think that he would be merciful to Rui Wang. Seeing that there might be more problems if the deadlock continued, Sun Yijia looked at her biological older brother and the many brothers and sisters who had appeared one after another, perhaps because they had heard about this matter. Originally, there were only a few people who helped to entertain the guests, but now, even those who were a few years old had appeared. She knew that they were all laughing at her fifth brother because her fifth brother's excellence had received too much attention and had become a stumbling block for them. They were jealous and hated him, but there was nothing they could do. Now that they finally had the opportunity, how could they not ruthlessly ridicule him? Sun Yijia turned around and whispered a few words to the maidservant beside her. After the maidservant brought an item over, Sun Yijia stood up and said, "Today, we are fortunate to have the three princes grace Duke Ding's Fu with your presence. Your highnesses are in a good mood, and this humble girl is willing to dance a song to liven things up for your highnesses. I hope that your highnesses will allow me to dance." She didn't choose a zither or a painting, but a dance. In front of everyone's eyes, especially when there was a man present, very few unmarried girls chose to dance because it would be seen as frivolous and undignified. In terms of reputation, there was almost no benefit at all, let alone a flower like Sun Yijia, who was high up in the mountains. Other than a few people, not many people knew that Sun Yilin could dance. Many people were surprised, but naturally, there were also many people who were waiting to see a good show. They were waiting to see if Sun Yijia could still be as arrogant as before after today. Sun Yijia was really going all out for her older brother. She changed her words slightly and chose the most daring talent. She just wanted the girls behind her to have less scruples and show off their strengths. Even if Prince Jean was the shortest of the shortest, the range of talents should be wider. And with her in front, even if there were some negative comments, it wouldn't affect the girls who were performing. In reality, Sun Yijia's actions were quite effective. Those who were still hesitating before all made a decision in their hearts and appeared to be much more relaxed. Even if they couldn't become Sun Yijia's wife, there were so many noble women present. Perhaps they would like them and form a good marriage. This was what most people thought. Sun Yijia was the prince of the Kang family's second princess consort. He was also very fond of this cousin of his. She was of noble birth and was talented and beautiful. She greatly satisfied his vanity. After marrying her, he would gain a lot of face for himself. He knew her motive. In his heart, he also wanted Sun Yilin to have a good wife because Sun Yilin's help would also be his help. At this time, he naturally couldn't continue to pretend to be deaf and mute. In order to prevent Li Hongyuan from humiliating Sun Yijia, he rushed to say, "Allow first." Even if Li Hongyuan might find trouble with him afterwards, he didn't care. Li Hongyuan glanced indifferently at the prince of the Kang family. Seeing that he was serious and didn't look sideways, he snorted lightly and didn't comment. However, not far away, Sun Yilin's emotions were complicated and indescribable. He didn't want his younger sister to do these things. He really didn't want to. Sun Yijia held the pipa and walked into the arena. Her legs were staggered. She squatted slightly and held the pipa diagonally. Half of her face was covered, and her fingers slid across the strings. The pipa dance began. As her body danced, the pipa's clear notes could be heard from time to time. The scene quieted down, and almost everyone stared at Sun Yijia. No matter what they thought of her, they couldn't help but admit that her pipa dance was quite good. Many of the difficult movements were performed very smoothly and beautifully. It wasn't that there weren't any noble maidens who had learned pipa dance, but almost none of them thought that they could do what Sun Yijia did. Even if they didn't want to admit it, the truth was the truth. After the dance, Sun Yijia's face became even redder, making her look even more beautiful. She bowed to the crowd and retreated. Li Honyuan saw the infatuated look on the prince of the Kong family and said indifferently, "Her figure isn't bad, and her looks aren't bad either. I think the feeling of playing with her should be quite good." Li Honyuan twirled his fingers and looked very interested. What Li Honyuan was really interested in was what his Wanwan looked like when she danced. Should he think of a way to get Wanwan to learn how to dance? Of course, he could save it for when they got married in the future. She could dance for him alone. She could take off her clothes piece by piece as she danced. Just thinking about it made his nose itch and his body heat up a little. The joy of a boudoir was probably nothing more than that. Jingwan naturally didn't know what he was thinking. Otherwise, who knew if she would give him a good beating without caring about her image and status? It was as if a basin of ice water had been poured over Prince Kang's head. He instantly regained his senses. Li Honyuan, he wasn't the only one who was humiliating Sunny Jia. He was humiliated as well. After all, he had long regarded Sunny Jia as his possession. If he could still tolerate such brazen behavior, then he wouldn't be a man. He roared in a rage. Originally, only the two brothers who were nearby heard his words. This time, everyone's eyes were focused on them again. Sunny Jia had just gone down, and Prince Kong was already like this. Prince Jean must have said something about her. For him to be so angry, it couldn't be anything good. They couldn't help but imagine all kinds of things. Their eyes moved back and forth between the few of them. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652906. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition Reading Website, ambicken.com. Chapter 28. Sunny Jia lowered her head slightly and sat quietly. She turned a deaf ear to everyone's gazes. Perhaps the current situation was within her expectations, and she didn't care, or perhaps it was something else. Only she knew what she was thinking. I didn't mention any names. Eldest brother, why are you so agitated? Prince Jean said indifferently. You. Prince Kang's eyes were fierce as he glared at Li Honyuan. If looks could kill, Li Honyuan would have been cut into pieces. Eldest brother, everyone is watching. Prince Rue reminded him out of kindness. It was just a sentence. If Prince Kong didn't shout it out, no one would know. But now, Prince Kong finally realized that he had done something stupid because of Li Honyuan. He suppressed his anger and retracted his gaze. Then he looked at Prince Rue, who was smiling warmly. Don't think that he didn't see the schadenfreude in his eyes. Eldest brother, sister-in-law isn't dead yet. She's already seriously ill. If she knew that you were hoping for her to die so that someone else could take her place, would she die of anger? She might even leave behind some vicious curse. Can you really hug the new bride with a clear conscience? Imperial Father has always said that eldest brother is deeply affectionate and loyal to sister-in-law. You don't even have a secondary consort. Li Honyuan continued to speak unhurriedly. Sixth brother. Prince Kong gritted his teeth and said, Ijia is only my cousin. Don't spout nonsense. Oh, so the person that eldest brother is thinking about is Miss Sunday. This prince found it strange. The only legitimate daughter of Duke Ding's mansion is 16 years old and hasn't married or even gotten engaged. So she's waiting for eldest brother. She's also deeply affectionate. Could it be that the two of you are in love with each other? In the future, it will be another beautiful story. Li Honyuan played with his teacup as if he was bored. The Sanfrewa prince clenched his fist tightly, his veins bulging. It was still the same old saying. There were some things that could not be made public even if everyone knew about them. The Sanfrewa prince also felt that he was very stupid. He even suspected that this bastard had long planned this and had used some kind of drug on him. Otherwise, How could he have been so agitated by him today that he would be the subject of gossip again and again? It's fine if sixth brother wants to help third brother attack me, but why do you have to involve a girl? Don't you know how important a girl's reputation is? So this king misunderstood? You will not marry Miss Sun? Of course not. When he said this, Prince Kang's heart was bleeding. In the current situation, he had no choice but to make such a choice. Everyone knew that his imperial father didn't know. His imperial father only knew that he was deeply affectionate. If this matter was exposed, he and the Sun family would suffer. After all, his imperial father didn't seem to want him to get closer to Ding General Manor. Good, each and every one of them is very good. After achieving his goal, Li Hongyuan didn't even bother to make a sound. He even leisurely listened to the next girl play the guqin. Prince Kong suppressed the urge to vomit blood in his heart and began to think about who to marry Sun Yijia to. If Sun Yijia were to marry someone else, he might be able to obtain more support. Although, if he were to marry her, he would be able to tie Ding General Manor more firmly to himself. Compared to having more support, the latter seemed to be more beneficial. After all, Ding General Manor was his maternal family. Other than himself, who else could they support? And with more support, the possibility of him ascending the throne would be higher. Since things had come to this point, his imperial mother could no longer insist on him marrying his younger cousin. As his thoughts raced, Prince Kong made himself feel a little better. He decided to enter the palace after leaving Ding General Manor and discuss with his imperial mother about the candidate for his younger cousin's husband. However, would the person they chose be able to get what they wanted? Li Hongyuan would tell them how naive they were. Li Hongyuan's purpose in disrupting the marriage between Prince Kong and Sun Yijia was not only to divide Prince Kong and Ding General Manor, but also because of Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin had 2 blood-related elder brothers and 1 blood-related younger sister. Because he more or less blocked his elder brother's path, his relationship with his younger sister was the best. Moreover, the two of them were only 1 year apart. They often played together since they were young, and their friendship was even deeper. Sun Yilin cared about his younger sister more than anyone else in the Sun family. Sun Yilin was a great talent in governing a country. In his previous life, after he ascended the throne, he promoted talents because he was confident in his own abilities. After all, in such a difficult situation, he was able to counterattack and become the final winner. He also became a veritable tyrant. He didn't care about enmity. Moreover, he only destroyed Ding General Manor and didn't exterminate the entire Sun family. Perhaps Sun Yilin cared about the people of the world, or perhaps it was for the sake of the other members of the Sun family. But he came up with many good ideas to govern a country and became his right-hand man. However, there was always a gap between the ruler and his official, and they couldn't get close. Li Hongyuan always thought that he still hated him because of the Sun family. Once he accidentally mentioned it, but the answer he received was, "Why can't your Imperial Majesty spare my younger sister's life? She's just a woman in the inner courtyard. What can she do?" In his previous life, Sun Yijia married Marquis Kong, and Li Hongyuan became the final winner. He killed Marquis Kong, so naturally, he wouldn't spare his wife and children. Wasn't this what every emperor did? In this life, Li Hongyuan still decided to put Sun Yilin in an important position and wanted him to work harder. Sun Yijia's family was naturally very important, and the person chosen by the Empress and Marquis Kong was definitely not good. As for who Sun Yijia would marry, Li Hongyuan had already decided. Therefore, unless the Empress and Marquis Kong chose the person in Li Hongyuan's heart, they were destined to be in vain. However, they couldn't even think of that person, so naturally, they wouldn't take a look. Then, it was destined that accidents would happen frequently, and they would be badly battered. It might even cause Sun Yijia to lose the value of a marriage alliance. Li Hongyuan's thoughts and eyes were a little scattered. Eunuch Mu was probably the only one who knew who he was looking at. Eunuch Mu looked in the direction of Miss Luo. Because of the direction, he only needed to move his eyes. He didn't even need to tilt his head slightly. It was just that they were a little far apart, so he couldn't see clearly. The girls presented their talents one after another, other than performances like dancing or playing the zither, which required a longer time to occupy the attention of the audience. Other performances like poems and paintings could be completed in the audience. In addition, many people didn't have the mood to do so, so there were more people watching the performances. In fact, it didn't take as long as expected. Jingwan, on the other hand, was watching with great interest. She saw that Luo Jingying had also presented a poem. That slender, elegant, and somewhat shy appearance was quite likable. Jingwan nudged Yuan Xiaoqiao and Zhou Shuang, who were beside her, and whispered, "Aren't you guys going? Didn't these two also like Sun Yilin?" As a result, the two of them rolled their eyes at her and didn't even bother to say a word. Well, these two were purely infatuated with him, just like the girls in her previous life who clamored to like a certain Prince Charming. Although it was definitely not so exaggerated, at most they would secretly whisper a few words and secretly glance at him. The nature of the two was the same. It had nothing to do with marriage at all. After understanding the thoughts of these two people, she was relieved. She was afraid that they would have the idea of marrying no one but him. That would be terrible. Looking at them again, she sighed in her heart. They were indeed worthy of being noble ladies in ancient times. Each of them was multi-talented. In her opinion, regardless of status, any one of them would be suitable for Sun Yilin. As for men, no matter how outstanding they were, they should burn incense and pray to Buddha if they could marry these girls. How shameless were they to be picky when there were so many girls in their families. Jingwan inadvertently saw Sun Yijia again. Actually, she admired her quite a bit. Of course, her environment had created her proud and aloof personality. Her nature was actually not bad. Furthermore, perhaps she didn't really like Majesty Kong. Perhaps she was just a sacrifice for benefits. Perhaps it was because the Sun family had given her a rich life and a high status, and the husband they chose for her would only make her more noble. She should repay them. This was also the norm now. That was why she didn't resist, didn't fight for it, and silently accepted it. Who had asked her for her true thoughts? Of course, this was only Jingwan's own guess. Could Sun Yijia really be willing? She didn't have the ability nor the obligation to care about others. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652907. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 29. These few words made Majesty Kong stand up immediately and kick him. Those who didn't know would think that he kicked him because he couldn't believe that his princess consort was gone. In reality, it was just that Li Hongyuan had just revealed something. Now that she was gone, it was as if someone had slapped him hard in the face. Everything was as if what Li Hongyuan said was true. It was embarrassing. Let's go back. The housekeeper fell to the ground and couldn't get up. He was unlucky. He didn't know the cause and effect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it directly. Prince Kong left in a hurry. Not long after, almost everyone knew that Princess Consort Kong was gone. Then, they looked at Sun Yijia with a strange gaze. Finally, she only needed to wait one more year before she could get married. Sun Yijia didn't know, but she still had an arrogant attitude. However, no one knew that her hands, which were hidden in her sleeves, were clenched so tightly that her nails were almost digging into her flesh. After all, she was just a girl in her teens. She had never experienced anything. How could she really not care? She was born into a noble family. She had lived a luxurious life since she was young. She had never thought of being more noble, let alone being a second wife. Even though more than one person told her that she would be the future empress and the most noble woman in the world. So what? It wasn't what she wanted. Moreover, the most noble woman wasn't the most noble person. Her aunt was sitting in that position every day that she could sleep peacefully, and every day that she didn't have any troubles. Her husband only gave her superficial respect. He didn't dote on her at all. Moreover, in other people's eyes, she was probably a woman who stole someone else's husband. In the past, her cousin-in-law liked her very much. However, more than a year ago, her cousin-in-law looked at her with poisonous eyes. At that time, she understood that even if her cousin-in-law knew, others would think that her cousin-in-law didn't know. At that time, she had just found out about her aunt and her family's decision. She was unwilling. She was terrified that she was about to fall into a trap. She also felt deeply guilty towards her cousin-in-law. Before she could express her thoughts, her mother sharply interrupted her. She told her again and again that it didn't matter if she was the second wife. The result was the most important. She would be the empress, her son would be the emperor, and she would be the empress dowager. How laughable. It was still unknown whether or not her cousin, Majesty Kong, could become the emperor. She was still unmarried, but she was already thinking about what would happen decades later. If she did not wait for the results to appear, then it would all be an illusion. They themselves said that the one who had the last laugh was the winner. Then, what right did they have to think that the Duke of Kong would have the last laugh? What right did they have to think that the Duke of Ding would have the last laugh? Even if she married the Duke of Kong and the Duke of Kong ascended the throne, what right did she have to have the last laugh? Nothing is certain in the world. You can't do whatever you want. Sun Yijia thought of her cousin-in-law dying with hatred. Since that time, she didn't dare to see her again. It was not because she was afraid of her hateful eyes, but because she was worried that her cousin-in-law would be angrier and sadder if she saw her, which would worsen her illness. After all, her existence would only be an eyesore to her, as if she was deliberately reminding her of something. If it wasn't for her cousin-in-law herself, she probably wouldn't know how much her cousin-in-law had suffered in the past year. Li Hongyuan stood up slowly and dusted his robes. It looked like he was ready to leave. Sixth brother, what are you? Eldest sister-in-law is dead. As a younger brother, I naturally have to go and comfort eldest brother. Third brother, you've never been good at showing your face. Why are you still wasting your time here? Li Hongyuan was very good at tearing people's faces apart. Lord Rue wanted to slap him to death. As expected, he was happy too early. He could never count on this bastard to stand on his side and help him wholeheartedly. Of course I have to go. It's just that it doesn't seem good for sixth brother to give up halfway. Lord Rue suppressed his anger. I'm not Yu Lao. It was enough for him to try his best to matchmake himself and Wan. Other people were nothing to him. Whether their marriages were good or not had nothing to do with him. Even if it was Sun Yijia, he would make it up to Sun Yilin sooner or later. What he did, others would have to pay back 10 times or 100 times. If Li Hongming wanted him to do something, he would let him take advantage of him on the surface, but he would make him lose more behind his back. You're just teasing a group of people, aren't you? Lord Rue glared at him fiercely and left in a huff. His mother always wanted him to act like an elder brother. However, this bastard's ability to make people angry and punish people indiscriminately made him unable to pretend anymore. The 3 true Buddhas had left. Today's situation had reached this point. There was no need to continue the banquet. When someone said goodbye, the others also said goodbye one after another. Naturally, the Sun family wouldn't stay for long. They forced themselves to cheer up and see the guests off. When Jingwan was about to leave, she saw Sun Yijia face to face. She was very shocked. Previously, she was a delicate flower in full bloom. Now, she seemed to have lost her moisture. She was stupefied and even had a trace of death. Jingwan instantly understood that she had no interest in Lord Kong. Jingwan wanted to say something, but now was not the time to talk. Sun Yijia seemed to have heard her. She glanced at Jingwan and nodded without any other expression. However, she saw the worry in Jingwan's eyes. Sun Yijia felt a little warm in her heart. At this time, her family didn't notice her situation, but a stranger showed her concern. Although it was just a little, and it might be with the purpose of deliberately getting close to her, it still made her feel better. When only the Sun family was left, several key people gathered in old Madam Sun's courtyard because Duke Ding and his eldest son hadn't gone to the yamen yet. The close attendant left by Lord Kong told them that Sun Yijia was going to marry someone else. Everyone present had different thoughts. Sun Yilin wanted to comfort his sister, but when he saw the flash of joy on Sun Yijia's face, he knew his sister's real thoughts. He also didn't want Lord Kong to become his brother-in-law. Although there were no concubines in Lord Kang's backyard, there were many concubines and several children. They were definitely not a good match. He thanked Lord Jean in his heart. The angriest person was naturally the Duchess of Ding. First, he made fun of her son. Now, he ruined her daughter's good fortune. She even cursed a few times regardless of her status. Enough. Old Madam Sun reprimanded. She rubbed her forehead with a headache and looked a little tired. Duchess of Ding shut her mouth. Although she controlled the power of Duke Ding, she didn't dare to be rash in front of her mother-in-law. Not only because old Madam Sun was her husband's mother, she had to carefully serve her, but also because she knew how powerful old Madam Sun's methods were. Don't think that she could be underestimated just because she didn't manage things now and only ate vegetarian and recited Buddhist scriptures all day. I know you are worried about the two children, but what you did today was really inappropriate. What is Lord Jin's status? He is Jin Shang's son. Is he not allowed for you to say that he isn't? I have another confirmation here. Jin Qinhuang did not appoint a candidate for Lin Ji. Don't talk about those useless things now. Wait until Kong Wang Fei's funeral is over. Quickly arrange for their marriage. Don't be so picky. It's almost enough. Don't let Jia girl become an old lady when the time comes. Then you will regret it. Grandmother, the Empress and Lord Kong should have other arrangements for Mimi's marriage, right? Sun Yilin said bitterly. Duchess of Ding didn't have time to be happy about her son's matter before she heard this. To tell the truth, she couldn't decide her own daughter's marriage. It was fine before, but now it was still like this. No matter what, it wouldn't make people happy. I will go to the palace and talk to the Empress. Thinking about it, the Empress will still give this face. That was her own daughter. Because she insisted on marrying Jia to Prince Kong, her mother, old Madam Sun, gave in at that time. This time, the Empress had no reason to refute her mother. However, she was afraid that there would be more estrangement between mother and daughter. Grandmother. Sun Yijia was moved and felt guilty. Okay, you can all go back. I'm tired and want to rest. Old Madam Sun waved her hand. They all had to withdraw. Lin Ji, wait a moment. Sun Yilin turned back. What other instructions does grandmother have? Old Madam Sun waved to the other people at the door, letting them leave quickly. After a moment, she opened her mouth. Lin Ji, do you have a girl you like? If you do, just tell grandmother. Grandmother will always fulfill your wish. Digression. Several people had already asked whether the female lead was the same person in the two lives of the male lead. This question was absolutely correct. The male lead was a psychopath. His obsession with the female lead started from his previous life. If it was someone else, he would definitely know immediately. It was not just for show. The female lead was transmigrated, and the male lead was reborn when he was 10 years old. At the beginning of this article, the female lead was 14 years old, and the male lead was 22 years old. In other words, when the male lead was reborn, the female lead was already 2 years old. Of course, 6 years after the male lead was reborn, he sent someone to the female lead when he left the palace at the age of 16. There was no problem with the timeline. As for the male lead's obsession with the female lead in his previous life, it was almost when the female lead was 17 years old. https://www.bicken. com/11/11807/6652908. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bikugo mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 30. Sun Yilin was rather surprised. Grandmother had never cared about the marriage of her grandchildren. Why did she suddenly say this? This was for his own good. For some reason, a barefaced face flashed through his mind. It was not a stunning beauty, but it had the feeling of an expert who had an absolute advantage in some aspects. At that time, she had an unattainable confidence. That kind of unostentatious expression was particularly moving. But this was just a flash. Sun Yilin did not want his mother to meet his grandmother. So he shook his head. It wasn't a bad idea to bury the girl whose name he might have only met once in the bottom of his heart forever. Old Madame Sun did not miss Sun Yilin's reaction at that moment. She was certain that even if he did not like someone, there must be a girl who occupied a slightly special place in his heart. My words are valid before your mother decides on a fiancé for you. Grandmother, can it be sister instead? Girls are always easy to be at a disadvantage. Old Madame Sun waved her hand. The Empress will not agree. Sun Yilin was stunned. But you are not. Don't you know what it means to build one path in the open and another in the dark? I entered the palace only to prevent her from issuing an imperial edict for marriage. I am very clear about the Empress's personality. She will not interfere openly, but she will hint to your father that she will definitely not agree to the person I choose. Even if I insist, she is the Empress. It is too easy for her to secretly arrange a marriage, and we are at our wits' end. If we siblings must at least have a marriage alliance to draw support for the Sanfua prince, I can do it too. Then, Linjier, think carefully. Among the families in the capital, do the families with marriageable men have an advantage, or do the families with marriageable women have an advantage? Sun Yilin thought carefully, and then fell silent. The noble ladies, who could match his status, were mostly supporters of the other princes. As for those who were neutral and worth roping in, most of the men in the family were marriageable men. His sister was more worthy of marriage alliance than him. They naturally hope that both of you siblings will marry. I first showed a strong stance on Jia's marriage, and then took a step back. Only then can I interfere in your marriage. Between the two of you, I can only help you. Thank you, grandmother. You can go. Remember my words. Grandson will take his leave. Old Madame Sun was a little absent-minded. If old Madame Luo could give up wealth and glory for her granddaughter's sake, why couldn't she think for her granddaughter for once? Yes, she did not believe that Madame Luo did not know about her grandson's situation, so the reason for her refusal was self-evident. When she was young, she wasn't as decisive as her. She wasn't happy all her life. Now, there was no reason for her to be defeated by her. Although this kind of competition was boring and no one would know, old Madame Sun still couldn't help but want to do something. Sun Yilin saw Sun Yijia waiting for him outside. Little sister, fifth brother. The brother and sister walked side by side in silence for a long time. Sun Yilin was the first to speak. Regarding Prince Kang's matter before, were you unwilling? Fifth brother, I can see my cousin-in-law with a clear conscience now, even though it's just to send her off. Is it just because of guilt? Sun Yilin's mouth was a little dry. No, maybe it's because I was born noble. So I yearn to be ordinary. In the eyes of many people, this is probably not good for me, but I do think so. Whether it's naivety or ignorance, it's fine, although it's only a thought. Sun Yijia knew that she couldn't escape the fate of marriage. I'm sorry, fifth brother is useless. I can't help you. Because of his eldest brother, he gave in and refused the emperor's promotion. Don't say that. Eldest brother is our elder brother. If you two fight, I'll be sad. But I don't want to retreat anymore. I can't interfere with your marriage, but at least I have to support you in the future. Previously, it was Prince Kong. He bullied you, and I couldn't stand up for you. Now it's different. There's no other prince or prince suitable for marriage. Except for them, I can always think of a way to deal with the others. Sun Ijia suddenly burst into laughter. Okay, I'll wait. However, not long after, they once again knew what it meant to be played by fate. Li Honyuan probably didn't expect that his interference in Sun Ijia's marriage would cause Sun Yilin to enter the officialdom ahead of time. As for the trouble it brought to him, he didn't think it was important. He had long been used to it and could solve it with a wave of his hand. Jingwan sat next to Madame Luo. Her thoughts were a little scattered. When she thought of Sun Ijia's expression, she felt inexplicably sad. What's wrong with Wanwan? Are you worried about Princess Ryu? Madame Luo asked worriedly. Princess Ryu's father is only a Junwang. The reason why she was conferred the title of Princess Ryu was because the Empress is her aunt. Rather than saying it was out of love, it's better to say it was to save face. After all, with Princess Ryu's unlikable personality, even a clay figurine would have some temper. There are actually many people who can't get along with her, but can suppress her. You don't have to worry too much. Jingwan shook her head and told Madame Luo her conjecture about Sun Ijia. Madame Luo couldn't help laughing. Our Wanwan is really open-minded. She hasn't even settled her own matters yet, but she still has the leisure to care about others. I just feel that it's a pity for such a proud, beautiful, and outstanding woman. Being born in that kind of family, this kind of thing is inevitable. As long as the elders make a decision, then there's no escaping or hiding. Looking at it, grandmother is still lucky. She chose the right person and got what she wanted. Then isn't I even luckier? Jingwan smiled happily. It's too early to say that. When you reach grandmother's age and have experienced everything, then you'll know whether you're lucky or not. However, grandmother is willing to believe that Wanwan is a lucky person. Returning to the Luo family, they got off the carriage, and the group of people leisurely headed towards the Fu. Luo Jingying timely expressed her worry for Jingwan. Ryu Junju is unruly, willful, and domineering. She suffered such a big grievance today, so she naturally wouldn't dare to do anything to Jin Qinwang. She will certainly bear a grudge against third Jejia. In the future, she will find trouble with us. What should we do? Deeply worried. Actually, I should have told third Jejia about the noble ladies in the capital. If third Jejia knew Ryu Junju's character, perhaps she would be able to endure it, and there probably wouldn't be any trouble. Fourth Jejia, how can you say that? That Ryu Junju's words were so unpleasant to hear, slandering third Jejia. If third Jejia endured it, it would save you trouble, but it would also ruin your reputation. Can you bear the reputation of hooking up with an outsider? Not to mention a Junju, even a princess would fight back. Is it because we are women of an official's family that we have to swallow everything in silence towards the women of the imperial family? If third Jejia's reputation is ruined, can fourth Jejia gain any benefits? None of the unmarried ladies of our Luo family will be able to escape. Luo Jingyu retorted. Luo Jingying choked again. She could see that Luo Jingyu really relied on Luo Jingwan's presence and started to unreservedly oppose her. What dull and taciturn. She clearly had a sharp tongue. In the past, it was mostly an act. Zumo, granddaughter absolutely didn't mean that. Granddaughter was worried and momentarily muddle-headed. That's why. Luo Jingying hurriedly explained, looking like she was about to cry. Enough, go back to your own courtyard. Old Madame Luo impatiently waved her hand. Not learning the good things, but learning a pile of crooked ways. https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/6652909. HTML chapter error. Click here to report registration free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicon.com. Com Beacon. Com Mobile Edition. Chapter 31. Jingwan returned to the Haiteng Inn and changed into a more relaxed set of clothes. She then looked at the pots of treasures that she had brought from Qi, an prefecture, to the capital. Along the way, she did not take good care of them, and they looked a little wilted. Jingwan was even worried that they would not survive. However, in the past few days, Jingwan saw that they had regained their vitality. She then looked at the pot of treasured emolan. Because she did not deliberately extend the flowering period, she was surprised to see that it was about to bloom. This was enough for her to throw all of her worries aside. She stared at the orchid attentively. The more she looked at it, the more beautiful it looked. Therefore, Jingwan was the true love-struck fool. After looking at it for a while, Jingwan stood up and asked the servant to prepare the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. She wanted to draw. She wanted to draw the entire process of emolan blooming. In her previous life, she had learned Chinese painting from her grandmother. She also focused on flowers. In order to restore the beauty of various flowers, she chose fine brushwork. 2 years ago, when she first started learning painting in this life, she also used fine brushwork. The teacher praised her talent, and others said that she painted well. Jingwan did not think much of it. Jingwan drew the outline of the orchid in detail. From the beginning to the end, she drew 4 pictures in one go. In the process, she did not look at the pot of orchid again. Mama Gong carefully looked at the 4 pictures of the orchid from different angles. Then, she walked around the orchid. Sure enough, the 4 pictures of the orchid were the same as the shape of emolan from different angles. This meticulousness, this amazing memory, and the foundation of painting. Her poetry may not be good, and she may not be good at zither or chess, but no one could deny her excellence. Then, Jingwan added different backgrounds to the orchid and began to color it layer by layer. When she was in Qian Prefecture, as long as she wanted a color, she just had to tell the people below. At least an hour, at most 3 to 5 days, she would be able to get a usable color. If it was not ready-made, she would use other substitutes. Jingwan knew that it was Madame Luo's indulgence. She was grateful and made the best use of these paints that were hard to come by. Therefore, her paintings were always colorful. Although they looked like the same color, they were actually layers upon layers of different paints spread out. Every time a painting was completed, it would always give the greatest visual enjoyment. The image was also very lively. Jingwan spent the rest of the day painting. Aside from eating and resting, she spent most of her time painting. It was only at night that the 4 small pictures of orchid were completed. With her background, it even gave people a dreamy feeling. Miss, you're really good at drawing. The maidservants might not know how to draw, but they understood beauty and ugliness. They sincerely praised. Mama Gong had seen a lot of good things and couldn't help but praise in her heart. She thought about the booklets of flowers that Miss had made. Every flower was accompanied by exquisite pictures and the most detailed introduction. If those booklets were to be leaked, they would definitely be worth 10 times or even 100 times more than the most valuable flowers that Miss had personally planted. As the saying goes, it is better to teach a man how to fish than to teach him how to fish. But who would be willing to share it with others? Not to mention that it was a painting method that had never been seen before. Those booklets of flowers were the first of its kind. If it had been accumulated for hundreds or thousands of years, its value would be unimaginable. Although money was vulgar, it was the most direct expression of the value of those booklets. In the next few days, Jingwan spent all her time and effort on this. Her grandmother did not accompany her, and she did not mention going to the family school. She did not even think about making rouge or face powder. After Madame Luo found out what she was doing, she also let her torment herself. One painting after another, emolan bloomed little by little until it showed the most beautiful posture. There were more than 40 paintings in total. Although the paper was not big, it was still quite tiring. Jingwan was released from that excited state. She estimated that she would not touch a painting brush for at least 10 to 15 days. She sorted them all out and admired them one by one. This time, she was in a good state. Jingwan was very satisfied. However, Jingwan still felt that the most important thing was that the flowers were good. They were deeply liked by her and made her willing to become a flower slave. Jingwan felt that these paintings and the booklets of flowers were enough as a return gift to her grandfather. In the past few days, it was worth mentioning that Duke Dingwa's youngest legitimate daughter, Duke Cheng's wife, Li Ruyu's mother, dragged her sick body back to Duke Dingwa's residence not long after the banquet at Duke Dingwa's residence was over. Someone saw her leave with a pale face and red and swollen eyes. No one would believe that she did not do it on purpose. After all, what kind of place was Duke Dingwa's residence? Was it something that outsiders could casually peek into? Then there was Duke Dingwa's son Yilin's fiancée, who was still undecided. Later, he accepted the position of an official in the inner court. Although he was only a 7th-rank official, because he was always by the emperor's side and was responsible for reading for the emperor in his free time, he often saw the emperor's face. Naturally, he could easily know the emperor's various conditions. It could be said that he was a person that all the big shots had to deal with carefully. He could not be underestimated. Then, there were rumors that he did not get along with his elder brother. Then there was Sun Yijia's selection of a husband. It was unknown whether it was to draw a clear line between her and the Prince of Kong, but the selection of a husband for her was very high profile. Even if a princess was selecting a prince consort, it would probably be the same. Many people were guessing who would be able to pluck this unattainable flower. Although she performed a dance at Duke Dingwa's banquet, there was a reason for it. More people praised her for being affectionate and righteous. The emperor personally decreed that Princess Consort Kong would be buried as the crown princess. Everyone guessed that this was a sign of something. Then, during Princess Consort Kang's mourning period, the Prince of Kong took in a side consort. It was said that Princess Consort Kong had requested before her death. The side consort was her biological sister from her maternal family. She hoped that she could take good care of the children that Princess Consort Kong had left behind. Finally, there was Wu Anho's heir apparent's wedding. The girl he married, naturally, did not have a high status, but it was still acceptable. In the entire capital, from the nobles to the officials at all levels, almost everyone sent congratulatory gifts. Of course, they did not expect these gifts to be very valuable. If they were generous, they would be average. However, most of the families did not send anyone. Some of them followed the trend and purposely ostracized Wu Anho's residence. Some of them did not want to cause trouble for the Wu Anho's residence. If too many people went, the residents would not be able to receive them properly. It would make everyone feel awkward, and it would also be a slap to the emperor's face. After all, the emperor valued Wu Anho's residence so much. The Luo family naturally belonged to the latter group. One event after another could be said to be brilliant and varied. The Duke Dingwa's residence, in particular, was in the limelight. It was enough to make people talk about it enthusiastically for a long time. Jingwan knew the inside story of the Wu Anho's residence. She sighed and had the idea of cooking the hound after the cunning rabbit was killed, although the process was a little longer. After the founding of the Duke Dingwa's residence, it ended up like this. In her opinion, it would be better to directly decline like the other families. At least the people were still there. Of course, this was only Jingwan's own opinion. She had not experienced it, so she did not dare to speculate. In the past few days, other relatives came one after another, but Madame Luo did not ask her to meet any guests. After Luo Shangshu was sent to the Amen, Jingwan packed up and went directly to the study with her things. Jingwan did not know that her grandfather was working so hard to teach his children and grandchildren after being sent to the Amen. After she was allowed to enter the study, she saw her father, uncles, and brothers standing there as if they were being punished. She could not help but hesitate. Should she go back first and find another time to come again? Unfortunately, Luo Peishan had already let her in. How could he let her leave without saying anything? In just a few seconds, Jingwan calmed down. Under everyone's gaze, she greeted him politely. "What's the matter, third girl?" Luo Peishan asked, and his eyes fell on the tray in her hand. "Didn't I get grandfather's treasure? I also want to show my filial piety." She put the tray in front of Luo Peishan. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652910. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 32. Jingwan didn't disturb him. When he finished reading all 40 pictures, a lot of time had passed. The people around the table stretched out their heads. If the things were not in Luo Peishan's hands, they would have reached out to grab them. Jingwan had already retreated to the side to admire the various decorations in the study. There were 2 volumes below, each of which was 2 fingers thick. After flipping through 2 or 3 pages, Luo Peishan suddenly closed them. This was a good thing, a treasure. He had to keep it for himself. He raised his head and looked at his children and grandchildren. Suddenly, he became impatient and waved his hand. "Go away." Although unwilling, he didn't dare to disobey Luo Peishan's words. He obediently went to the side, but his eyes kept glancing at the table. "Third girl, come to grandfather." Luo Peishan was full of smiles. Jingwan could deal with a serious and meticulous grandfather easily. Now, he was smiling like an old fox. Jingwan was a little hesitant. If Luo Peishan knew Jingwan's thoughts, he would be depressed. He was smiling amiably because he didn't want to scare his granddaughter. "Third girl, where did these come from?" "I painted them myself. I don't know what to give to grandfather. Apart from the flowers I raised, this is the only thing I can give. Because I only brought a few pots of flowers to the capital. The journey was bumpy. Plus, I was in poor health and neglected to take care of them. Some of them are not very good. I need to rest for a while, so I chose this. I hope grandfather doesn't dislike it." How could he dislike it? Even Nurse Gong could think of the value of these pictures. How could Luo Peishan not think of it? Moreover, he thought of more. Not to mention the future. The value of these pictures was quite high. If they were given to people who liked painting and flowers, they would be priceless. "I didn't expect the third girl to have such painting skills. Did you create this painting method yourself?" A new painting method was bound to be passed down through the ages. Although it couldn't reach the level of the founder, it was enough for future generations to remember. Isn't this painting technique very common? Jingwan was a little confused. Luo Peishan immediately understood that his old wife had concealed this matter in order to protect her granddaughter. The title of a talented woman was not necessarily a good thing. If it was a man doing this, he would definitely gain both fame and fortune. But for a woman, perhaps she would attract the attention of others and be measured like goods. The world was just so unfair. Seeing Jingwan frown slightly, it was obvious that she had understood the key point. Have any paintings been leaked? No. She had only ever painted flowers, and she herself was not someone who liked to show off. In addition, she thought that all outsiders knew how to paint. Naturally, when she was in Chi and Manor, other than a few people in the manor, no one knew that she could paint. Luo Peishan nodded. If there was, his wife would deal with it. What do you think? Jingwan didn't think much. She faintly looked at her father. Luo Rongyan paused, and finally looked at her brother, Luo Jinghua. Luo Peishan nodded. She was indeed a sensible child. Such a good opportunity to become famous, but she was not tempted and knew the stakes. Not to mention people of her age. Too many people who had experienced the ups and downs of the world might not be able to keep their hearts. The others present also understood that she wanted to give this credit to her brother. It was not impossible to give it to her father, but once this new painting method was spread, it would bring honor and prestige. Her father's temperament was indifferent to fame and fortune, so he might as well give it to Luo Jinghua to earn some capital. Next, learn painting from your sister. If you don't learn well, how can you take her things? Luo Peishan said to Luo Jinghua with a straight face. Just like Jingwan, he didn't ask for Luo Rongyan's opinion. Fortunately, Luo Rongyan really didn't care. However, Luo Rongyan also coveted the orchid paintings and the beauty charts. Luo Jinghua also felt uneasy when such benefits fell on his head for no reason. Grandfather, isn't this not very good? Sister will suffer too much. This is the best way to deal with it. I don't care about these things, so third brother doesn't have to care too much about it. If you really feel guilty, third brother can treat me better in the future, Jingwan said with a smile. What else could Luo Jinghua say? Naturally, he repeatedly promised. It was as if he was willing to sacrifice himself for Jingwan. In this way, the matter was settled. Whether the others were envious or jealous, they could only hide it in their hearts. They couldn't say a word to outsiders. Luo Peishan was also a love-struck fool. He cared more about the beauty charts. Third sister, are there only these 2 beauty charts? There are 18 completed volumes. There are still some unfinished ones. Luo Peishan didn't feel that Jingwan had given him too little. Grandfather, I'll let you have a look at the rest. I'll have someone make a copy. I don't need yours. I'll have someone send them over when I go back. It doesn't matter if grandfather keeps them. I'll make another one. Originally, I was going to give all of them to grandfather, but because there are too many and they're quite heavy, I can't carry them all at once. Besides, what if grandfather doesn't like them? That's why I didn't bring them all. In Jingwan's view, these weren't disposable things. If they ran out, she could just make another one. Don't like them? How could he not like them? Not to mention those who loved flowers. As long as it was a scholar, there wouldn't be anyone who didn't like them. Luo Peishan thought about it. These beauty charts might be of great use, so he didn't refuse. However, he couldn't take so many good things from his granddaughter for free. Even if he had to throw away his old face, he still had to get a few pots of treasures back for her. Let him think about it. Which families were famous for their treasures? The Prime Minister of the Cabinet, Ruan Ruizong, claimed to have collected all kinds of chrysanthemums in the world. The chrysanthemums he took out every year at the chrysanthemum banquet were indeed coveted. However, that old man didn't get up early without benefits. It was slightly difficult to get something from him. The Chancellor of the Supreme Court, Diwu Taiching, that sissy old man, had the most camellias in his house. However, he had always been very protective of his family's famous products. It was very difficult for others to take a look at them. If they wanted his camellias, they had to exchange them with other famous products. There was also the Minister of the Ministry of Works, who was in a high position before the age of 40. He had the most plum blossoms transplanted in his house. There were more varieties than the ones in Ertzi's courtyard. There were even a few rare treasures. Unfortunately, he was a smiling tiger. It was difficult to get one of his plum blossoms. There was also Sun Yilin from Ding General Manor. He seemed to have collected all 4 famous peonies. Ding General Manor didn't have anything. Therefore, as that boy's treasure, no matter what the conditions were, he wouldn't exchange it. That was the most difficult thing to get. However, that boy had a lot of other famous products. Perhaps he could think of a way. Luo Peishan thought about it while admiring the orchid painting. The more he looked, the more wonderful it was. It was so lifelike and dreamlike. However, third girl, why does grandfather find this orchid quite familiar? Grandfather just gave it to me a few days ago. Don't you recognize it? That's Emolan. It actually bloomed. It was no wonder that Luo Peishan didn't recognize it. The main reason was that the background was too confusing. Everyone in the room had seen that Emolan, but no one recognized it. However, when Jingwan said so, it looked like it. When I ask someone to send the Chu and Fong Fu, I'll show it to you. Okay. That's Emolan hadn't been in Luo Peishan's hands for a long time. As far as he knew, the flower bud had been in his hands for a long time. However, it didn't bloom because it was the first time this lawn bloomed. The person who planted it didn't know what was going on. Then, Jingwan began to explain to Luo Peishan the many varieties of orchids, their habits, cultivation methods, what soil to use, how to change the pot, how to split the plant, their flowering period, and even some small methods to extend the flowering period. Of course, this wasn't all the knowledge accumulated from the previous life. After all, it was two completely different dynasties. The timeline might be thousands of years apart, and even different worlds. It was also related to the optimization of species. What Jingwan said was combined with the knowledge of this life. She had read a lot of books and summed it up. There was no situation where it was not applicable. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652911. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Biku mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 33. Grandfather considers himself a person who loves flowers and cherishes them. He is also quite knowledgeable in the field of planting. Today, I have really learned something new. Grandfather pays attention to rewards. Granddaughter pays attention to nurturing. Their starting points are different, so there is nothing to compare. How is there no difference? It is because you are more attentive than others. The same thing, you raise it better than others. Grandfather has seen it when you were young. At that time, Luo Peishan only felt that it was not bad. In the end, he made a mistake. Jingwan smiled, but did not say anything. She did not argue with Luo Peishan. Third lass, you said just now that you brought a few pots of flowers from Qi and Prefecture. What are they? Luo Peishan asked. At first, he did not care, but who knew if there would be a surprise now? There are mainly camellias. There are 3. There is also a peony, a pot of chrysanthemum, and a pot of orchids. What are the varieties? Thinking about it, they should not be bad since they took the trouble to bring them to the capital from afar. The camellias are crane plume, strong fragrance, 18 scholars. Luo Peishan, who was drinking tea, was shocked. Although he did not spit out the tea in his mouth, he still choked and coughed violently. Jingwan quickly went around the table and patted Luo Peishan's back. Grandfather, why are you so careless? How did you choke? The others also became anxious and gathered around. However, it was obvious that they knew why their grandfather, was choking. If it were them, they would probably be even more unbearable. Just listen to what this girl was saying. Famous goods, precious goods, rare and famous species. Luo Peishan waved his hand and drove him to the side. He looked at Jingwan's eyes, which made Jingwan's heart somewhat uncomfortable. Grandfather, what else is there? You can say it all at once. I can still bear it. He touched his old heart. Jingwan lived in Qi and Prefecture all year round. Over there, growing flowers and plants was not very popular. In the capital, it did not seem to be very popular either. At least, there were no families who wanted to raise famous plants, and there was no such thing as flower competition. However, who didn't raise some flowers and plants? There were definitely many people who truly loved flowers, and in this circle, a pot of truly precious plants was definitely hard to find even with thousands of gold. Therefore, Jingwan did not know that if people knew that she had those things in her hands, the Luo family's doorstep would definitely be trampled flat. A group of normally serious old things would give up their old face to beg her. She also did not know what kind of wealth she had in her hands. However, from Luo Peishan's reaction, Jingwan more or less understood that she seemed to have underestimated her treasures. The peony is red, white, and pink. The chrysanthemum is jade phoenix. The orchid is a pot of special clivia. Jingwan saw her grandfather go from being shocked to being calm to being numb. Towards the end, his voice became softer and softer, as if he had done something wrong. Luo Peishan felt that he needed to be quiet for a while. Luo Peishan really was quiet for a long time. Then, he looked at Jingwan with shining eyes. Originally, he was envious of those stubborn old fellows. Now he was not the least bit envious. Under the circumstances that he did not know, his home had become a treasure mountain. There was no need to think of a way to get it from them. His own family had better things. Who would spend such a huge price to get their defective products? He wanted to see how those old fellows would show off. Just casually taking out a pot from his dear granddaughter would make them die of envy. As for suspecting that Jingwan was lying, exaggerating, or making a mistake because she did not recognize them, when he thought about Jingwan's nature and understanding of flowers and plants, it was simply impossible. Wan, come. Tell grandfather, where did you get these good treasures? It should be known that those old fellows with deep backgrounds would spend countless efforts to get a famous plant. Most of the time, it could only be found by chance. Why was it that when it came to his granddaughter, although it was not like cabbage, why did it feel so easy? It did not make sense. Jingwan could not help but take 2 steps back. Sure enough, when it came to the good stuff, even a serious and decent person would have to change his expression. Grandfather, it was my luck that was better. Some of them were found outside. Because the people in the flower market did not recognize them and did not see them bloom, I was sometimes not sure. In the end, I brought them back to raise them well and picked up a big bargain. Grandmother also indulged me and instructed the people in the plantation. They all knew that I liked those flowers and plants, so they sent some to me when they saw some in the wild. Not to mention that I really picked up 2 treasures. There were also a lot of inferior ones. That Clivia was a rural farmer who, because he was really short of money, made a lot of messy flowers and plants, hoping that I would take a fancy to one of them. I pitied him and wanted to give him some money regardless of whether he had it or not. I did not expect to see a mutant Clivia. When Jingwan talked about her great achievements, she was also very proud. This was also possible? Then did it mean that these people who thought highly of themselves actually missed out on a lot of treasures because of their poor eyesight? It was simply heartbreaking. If it were not for the fact that it was already too late now, Luo Peishan even wanted to drag Jingwan to the flower market right now and pick up all those hidden treasures. He would not let this matter rest. At this time, Luo Rongwei also opened his mouth with a bit of grief. Third girl, 3 years ago, your grandmother handed over our family's greenhouse to you to take care of. Although fourth uncle does not go there every day, he still goes there to take a look every now and then. Those treasures you mentioned, I did not see a single pot. Did you hide them? Jingwan did not feel guilty about hiding anything. Fourth uncle, you moved away a pot of my flowers in 10 days to half a month. Although there were many that were not the best, they were still first class. You did not know the value of the goods, and either gave them away casually or ruined them. How could I dare let you see those real treasures? If you really saw them and asked for them, how could I not give them to you? But if I gave them to you, my heart would ache to death. Just those that you took away, my heart ached for a long time. Luo Rongwei was embarrassed. He was wondering why there was a period of time when his mother forbade him to go to third girl's place to take flowers for fun. Luo Peishan suddenly picked up a book from the table and threw it at Luo Rongwei, you wastrel. Hearing Jingwan say this, his heart ached to death even though he did not see it. This old man is telling you, if you dare to take one step closer to Wan's greenhouse in the future, this old man will break your legs. The scholarly and refined old man, even if he was reprimanding people, his words were very elegant, and he would not act excessively. Suddenly, his words shocked all the children and grandchildren. Looking at Luo Peishan, their eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. The better ones were also a bit dazed. They even doubted if this was really their father-grandfather. Luo Peishan coughed to cover it up. When he was young, what had he not done? Was there a need to be so shocked? The flowers and plants that third girl raised when she was young were all very ordinary species. I just felt that you raised them better than others. Other than feeling that you were clever in this aspect, I did not have any other thoughts. If I had known earlier, I would have taken you out for a walk earlier. At the very least, I would have given you some of my better species to raise. Perhaps, unfortunately, no one in this world knew earlier. Jingwan laughed in spite of herself. Grandfather, I was young then and did not understand many things. Not to mention that you would not want to raise them for me. I also did not dare to do it myself. It's grandfather's fault. Luo Peishan seemed to have thought of something. You only brought a few pots. What about the rest? Some were given away, and some are placed in chi, a manner to take care of the servants in the greenhouse. I have taught them many things, so it's enough for them to take care of those flowers. I can make a list. Grandfather, if you like them, you can have them send them to the capital. Luo Peishan naturally did not disagree. Then he thought of what Jingwan had said before and asked anxiously, how are the pots of treasures that were brought to the capital now? They are basically all back. The 18 scholar is in the best condition and is about to bloom. As for the other 2 pots of camellia, I have plucked the buds. I plan to let them take care of themselves this year and not bloom. The clivia has also been treated, but the peony's flowering period is still 1 or 2 months away. It is enough time to completely raise them back. Luo Peishan was very excited when he heard this. If it were not for his rationality, it would not be good to barge into his granddaughter's courtyard directly. Now, he wanted to go and take a look. What is with the 3 colors? How can there be 3 different kinds of flowers on a tree? Wasn't that more precious than the 4 famous flowers? I've never even heard of it before. Am I too ignorant and inexperienced? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652912. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikugo mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 34. Luo Peishan sighed at Jingwan's intelligence, but he thought more in his heart. He joked that maybe Jingwan was a flower fairy in her previous life, which was why she was so clever in cultivating flowers and plants. Grandfather, how about I ask someone to move them here for you to take a look? Jingwan saw his eagerness and said. Luo Peishan hesitated. They just came back. If they are moved, what if they get hurt? How can they be so delicate? They are fine from Chi and prefecture to the capital. How about just the 18 scholars? And Emolan? Luo Peishan was really itching, so he nodded and agreed. So he ordered the servant to go back with Jingwan's maid. Of course, he couldn't leave the rest of the flowers behind. In the process of waiting, Luo Peishan was quite restless. He wasn't even this anxious when facing the important matters of the imperial court. Luo Jingda and his 2 brothers were waiting outside the door. Coming. Luo Peishan stood up and walked quickly to the door. After a while, he asked someone to bring the flowers in, as if he was protecting something. Emolan had already seen them. Even if they were in their most beautiful state, they were not as attractive as the 18 scholars. The 18 scholars of 1 pearl wasn't very big, but it wasn't small either. It was as tall as a person, and because it had been taken care of well, it looked very lush and verdant. There were buds of various sizes, and some of them had petals that could be seen. It's 18 scholars of 1 pearl. Luo Peishan was very careful. He wanted to touch them, but didn't dare to. They looked delicate and fragile, as if they would break if he touched them. Seeing him like this, the others naturally didn't dare to touch them. They were sure that if they touched them, they would definitely be beaten. As the only girl here, Jingwan reached out to touch them. Grandfather, you don't have to be so careful. But her words didn't work. She had seen a lot and raised a lot, but she didn't understand the mentality of people like her grandfather. Jingwan felt helpless. Most people couldn't raise these precious breeds well. Other than the problem of technique, it was also because they cared too much about them. Because they were overly careful, it would backfire. Just like humans, the more carefully they were raised, the more carefully they were raised. If they didn't appear weak, then they would be raised into a crooked seedling. There weren't many that could thrive. When she was in Qian Prefecture, she had also told the gardeners about it. However, they still could not let loose. Because it was expensive, they could not afford to pay for it even if they sacrificed their lives. Therefore, they had to be careful. It was simply a vicious cycle. After that, he put everything aside and wandered around the 2 pots of flowers. As for those who didn't particularly like them, when their grandfather, wasn't paying attention, they flipped through the flora of fragrances. They could more or less learn a few tricks, and they could even remember some of the plants that they had never seen before. Even if they didn't plant them themselves, it was still good to show them off. Old Madame Luo waited and waited, but old Master Luo didn't come, nor did her children and grandchildren come to pay their respects. Seeing that dinner time was almost over, she sent someone to the front study to take a look. Only then did she know the reason. Old Madame Luo didn't say much, and only ordered the food to be sent to the front yard. At this time, Wan Wan was still a treasure in the Luo family. Old Master probably doted on her more than himself. Why don't you leave these flowers with grandfather? Seeing that Luo Peishan hadn't gone to eat for a long time, Jingwan opened her mouth and said, "Move them back. Wan Wan, grandfather will be at ease if you take care of him." Luo Peishan said without turning his head, "That's fine. Come, send the flowers back to the elegant begonia house." "Why move them now? There's no hurry. Move them later." Jingwan looked at Luo Peishan with a smile. "No, grandfather. If you don't move them now, granddaughter won't be responsible for taking care of them. You little girl, are you threatening your grandfather?" Luo Peishan seemed to be angry. Luo Rongyan and Luo Jingwa's palms were sweating. How could this girl be so arrogant because she was pampered so easily? They naturally knew what kind of person Luo Peishan was. Looking amiable, could she stroke a tiger's whiskers? Jingwan's smile didn't change. "Yes, grandfather, you don't need to eat dinner and don't do anything. You must get rid of this root of trouble." How could Luo Peishan not know Jingwan's intentions? She was worried about his health. He wasn't really angry, and Wan Wan was also wasting time with him. She was hungry, so he felt quite guilty. As for whether his children and grandchildren were also hungry, a group of big men. So what if they were hungry? Luo Peishan couldn't help laughing. "Okay, move them away, move them away. But if I want to see them in the future, quickly send them over. Grandfather, don't worry. I promise to be on call." After Jingwan and the others left, Luo Peishan instructed that in the future, the residence's greenhouse would be handed over to Third Miss to manage. She could do whatever she wanted. Only a few people knew that in Luo Peishan's eyes, the greenhouse was as important as the study. Luo Peishan was really in a good mood today. Seeing that his good-for-nothing children and grandchildren were also very pleasing to the eye, he didn't reprimand them. Instead, he said a few words amiably and let them leave. When they were far away, Luo Jingming suddenly said, "In the future, when grandfather is angry, why don't you ask third sister to come and put out the fire?" Luo Rongping coughed heavily. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Luo Jingming shrunk his neck in the face of his own father. Luo Rongyan reached out and pinched Luo Jingming's neck. Some words are better left unsaid. It's meaningless to say them out loud. The meaning was self-evident. This showed that even the indifferent and otherworldly Luo Rongyan was actually afraid of his father. The last time Jingwan went to the study, because she didn't cause any commotion, the others just looked on coldly from the sidelines. This time, it was completely different. All the male masters of the Luo family who could speak were there. They were very clear about Luo Peishan's attitude. Now that the two people with the highest status in the Luo family were holding her in the palm of their hands, in addition to Jingwan's own value. Who would dare to slight her? Even if they didn't curry favor with her, at least they wouldn't openly find fault with her. It must be known that once one's heart was biased, then even if she was wrong, it would be someone else's fault first. In the main courtyard of Prince Jin's residence, the bedroom was brightly lit. Compared to the wealth and extravagance of other places in the prince's residence, this place was filled with warmth and comfort. If Jingwan was here, she would definitely see some traces of familiarity, because the layout was somewhat similar to her boudoir. One could imagine how crazy Li Hongyuan was when he peeked at Jingwan. At this moment, Li Hongyuan was sitting quietly on the couch. On the small jade table on the couch was a pot of blooming Chinese roses. Because it wasn't the peak of the flowering period, there weren't many flowers in full bloom. However, every single one of them was still tender and beautiful, without the slightest bit of damage. The branches and leaves were also carefully cared for, without the slightest trace of wilting. If Jingwan saw this pot of flowers, she would definitely be shocked. It was something she had given away before leaving Qi and Fu. Li Hongyuan gently fiddled with the petals with his fingers and was lost in thought for a long time. It was unknown whether he was really looking at the flowers or looking at the face of the person who raised them through the flowers. Only a few people, including Eunuch Mu, knew that all the flowers and trees that Jingwan gave away or sold in Qian Prefecture, whether they were expensive or ordinary, eventually fell into the hands of Li Hongyuan. A few pots were presented to several big shots in the capital city who loved flowers by their subordinates. If it were not for the fact that they couldn't get them through other channels, and Li Hongyuan himself didn't want to be on bad terms with them, he would be afraid of arousing suspicion if he asked for them by force. Therefore, he might be able to find some clues if he got to the bottom of it. Otherwise, he would have come to rob them in person. Wan's painstakingly made collection of flowers and the Mo Lan painting that she drew day and night were all in the hands of that old fox, Luo Peishan. Relying on the fact that he was Wan's direct elder, he took advantage of him. However, those things would be his sooner or later. Luo Peishan had better keep them safe for him. If there was even the slightest bit of damage, he might suffer a little in the future. When the fine brushwork painting was first introduced in his previous life, Li Hongyuan really thought that it was created by Luo Jingbua. But in this life, when Jingwan first started painting, he already knew who it was. Another group of people who took advantage of Wan. Similarly, he couldn't chop them up at will. When the fine brushwork painting was first introduced, it was highly sought after by the world because it was so vivid. Although there were originally similar painting methods, because it wasn't systematic, the effect was far from that of fine brushwork. Therefore, it quickly became popular. For a period of time, it was even more unrestrained than freehand painting. After 1 or 2 years, it gradually reached a balance. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652913. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 35. In his previous life, Jingwan didn't raise as many famous plants as she did in this life. After all, other than Jingwan's discerning eyes, some of the famous plants were sent to her by him. Jingwan was lucky, so he would let her be even luckier. There were also those books about flowers and trees, fragrances, and even books on agriculture. As long as there was a little bit of relevance, she collected everything from the past to the present. As for the paints used for painting, if she wanted them, she would send people to search all over the country. Whether it was something that had already been used or something that was heard could be used to paint, if the Luo family servants wanted to find it, they would always be able to find the relevant information and obtain unexpected gains. It wasn't that Madame Luo didn't have any suspicions, but the result of the investigation was that her granddaughter was very lucky. In her previous life, She captured the hearts of a group of people with a few rare treasures and many high-quality plants. However, because of her age, in order to avoid suspicion, only those old fellows with Luo Peishan's permission could directly curry favor with her. Jingwan's heart was pure and kind, and she respected the elderly. Those old fellows generally didn't need to pay too much to get what they wanted. They could get the famous plants they wanted from her, and even some cultivation methods that outsiders didn't know about. Those benefits were basically obtained by Luo Peishan on her behalf. And those people were self-conscious, so naturally, they wouldn't take Jingwan's things for free. At that time, Li Hongyuan wasn't a person who liked flowers and plants, but he heard that several officials in the capital almost fought over a pot of multicolored peonies. It could be seen that Jingwan was really their treasure. Thus, even if Jingwan didn't have a father in a high position, she still had a lot of advantages in her hands. When she was in trouble, as long as they were willing to help, they could easily help her. However, Jingwan's trouble was too big. Under the imperial power, they wanted to help, but they were powerless. After all, no matter how precious the famous plants were, they couldn't compare to the lives of their own families. They could only secretly regret. Because she knew their difficulties, she didn't expect anyone to help her from the beginning. Therefore, Jingwan did not hold any grudges against them for standing idly by. Instead, she took the initiative to distance herself from them. Li Hongyuan closed his eyes and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. There were some things that he really couldn't think about. Every time he thought about it, he might lose control of his emotions and want to uproot all the problems right now. However, it was still far from the right time. If things got messy at this time, he wouldn't be able to control the overall situation, and it would shake the foundation of Qi Yuan. This was not something he wanted to see. He didn't want to be like his previous life, where he would have to spend a lot of time to manage the unstable country. How would he have the time to share the joy with Wan? The gains would not make up for the losses. As for giving up the country, don't joke around. He was hated by so many people. No matter who ascended the throne, they would definitely want to kill him. Wan naturally would not be spared. As for giving up on Wan, that was the only obsession he had in his 2 lifetimes. That was even more impossible. To him, the position of emperor was not that important. After all, he had already sat on the throne. Although the supreme power made people yearn for it, it was still inferior to Wan. Someone come. A beautiful servant girl quietly walked in. Master, send it back. Yes. The servant girl stepped forward and carefully picked up the flower pot. Originally, it didn't have much weight to her, but she had to pay 120% attention to it because this flower was more precious than her life. Li Hongyuan didn't raise these flowers and plants in the Jin Wangfu because each pot was taken care of by a person. If he left them in the Jin Wangfu, it would be too eye-catching. Although he seemed to have no power or influence, he was favored by the emperor. There would always be people who wanted to curry favor with him. Naturally, they would look for the source of the things he especially liked, which was not what he wanted. All of them were raised in a manor outside the city. With such a large manor, who would care about the people who took care of the flowers and plants in the manor? Who would know that some people's real responsibility was only to take care of the pots of flowers and plants? In the manor, there were many famous and precious things, but the most popular job among the gardeners was to raise a pot of flowers and plants. No one knew the origin of these flowers and plants. Perhaps they were not very expensive, but if the master liked them, their value would increase exponentially. Although if they were raised badly, they would inevitably lose their lives. But if they were raised well, the reward was enough to make countless people jealous. Therefore, when new flowers and plants were specially ordered to be taken care of by the higher-ups, except for those who already had exclusive flowers and plants, everyone would rush forward to make sure that it was something they could raise and do everything possible to get it. After a good night's sleep, Jingwan got up early and began to recover her morning exercise that had been interrupted for a long time. Good health was very important, especially in this place where a small cold could kill people. She had been healthy since she was young, and it was not without reason. Her goal was to be like some people in her previous life who were over 50 years old but still had a body that was completely comparable to that of a woman in her 20s. Anyway, she had a lot of time now. As long as she was willing to persevere, it was not just a thought at all. Jingwan sometimes acted strangely, but the people around her were used to it. After all, Jingwan did not act out of line at the beginning, but she did it step by step, bit by bit. When it became a routine, everyone felt that it was natural. However, Mama Gong, who was good at maintaining health, was a bit strange at first, but after seeing it a few times, she understood the benefits. Not only did she not stop Jingwan, but she also made some appropriate changes to achieve the best results. After sweating, she washed up and drank a bowl of Bloodbird's nest porridge. Only then did she go to Falling Plum House to pay her respects to her parents, and then to the main courtyard to pay her respects to her grandmother. As for her grandfather, he had left early. If there was morning court, he would go to court. If there was no morning court, he would go to the Amen. If there was an important matter, he would go to the inner court. However, this time, Jingwan unexpectedly saw Luo Peishan. After paying her respects, she asked, "Grandfather, is it a day off today?" Third girl, after breakfast, tidy up. Make it simple and go out with grandfather. When he said this, there was a hint of urgency. Jingwan did not ask any more questions and only respectfully agreed. Madame Luo knew what he wanted to do, and a few people more or less guessed it. Come back early in the morning. Min Gear has been waiting for your day off. He wants to ask you for advice. Don't wait until after dinner again. Obviously, even though they had not been together for a few years, Madame Luo still knew Luo Peishan very well. When she spoke, she glanced at Jingwan, but Jingwan did not respond. Luo Peishan agreed. Min Gear was his wife's grandnephew and would most likely become his third girl's husband. Naturally, he had to guide him. Among the grandchildren, other than the three oldest brothers, only Jingwan had the honor to go out with Luo Peishan. They were basically numb to the special treatment that Jingwan received. At most, they would say a few words of jealousy in their hearts. Only she knew how to curry favor and act obedient. However, even if she did, it was still her ability. Others could not do it even if they wanted to. Luo Peishan changed into casual clothes. He was an ordinary, old man. At most, he had a scholarly temperament. When people saw him, they knew that his identity was probably not ordinary. Jingwan was also dressed plainly. She did not wear any headdress, and she did not wear anything on her wrist. The grandfather and grandson pair each took two people and separately got into the carriage. Then they strolled out. Jingwan knew that this trip was to the flower market. Grandfather brought her to Taobao. It was really making the best use of people. Jingwan also liked it very much. Because there were elders accompanying her, Jingwan was not restrained. Following beside Luo Shangshu, she looked around and enjoyed it. The capital's flower market was much bigger than Qi and Prefecture. There were many varieties of flowers and trees, and the quality was better. However, because there were many knowledgeable people, it was more difficult to find a good one. After listening to her grandfather's introduction, she knew that this street was basically filled with flowers that were planted by flower farmers outside the city to support their families, or wild flowers that were dug from the wild. Most of them were very ordinary. It was difficult to find a good variety. Of course, occasionally, there would be peddlers from other places. They would bring them along because they did not know them. Therefore, they might be extraordinary or worthless. If he did not bring Jingwan, Luo Peishan probably would not have come here. Although Taobao was one thing, looking at different flowers and trees was also a kind of enjoyment. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652915. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. calm mobile version reading website. Am Bicken. Calm that you're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.